And we're live. What's going on out there, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. And today we're going to be rewatching Summerslam 1998. This was one of them that I circled. This was one of them that when I started the idea for this whole deal, I circled on the whole, the little kind of itinerary there of places we wanted to go, things we wanted to watch. And this was one of them that I wanted to go back and rewatch just because I remember so vividly going back and watching, I remember so vividly living through the hype for this show because it was right at the peak of the Attitude Era, and it was right at the time when, things were going really well for the Attitude Era and for WWE in general. This was suddenly, all of a sudden, I started noticing that after a couple of year period of being the kid in school who still watches wrestling, now I was the kid in school who watches wrestling, who rocks his wrestling shirts, and people were coming to me and suddenly saying, "Hey, man, what's going on with wrestling?" But before we even get into it, we're going to try something a little bit different today. I'm going to attempt to double the way that we go live, and it's going to be right here on Twitter as well. So if you're watching along on YouTube and you prefer to watch right on Twitter, make sure you check us out at WatchWrestlePod, and we're going to try to go live on both of these. Let's see if this works. All right, so we should now be live with Watchalong Wrestling Podcast, both on YouTube as well as on Facebook. On Twitter. Let me go ahead and just check along and see how that stream is looking on Twitter, and hopefully it's looking decent enough, and we'll take it from there. But thank you guys so much for checking us out today on this Labor Day weekend. It's crazy to me that the summer is already at the point of ending, and this is the unofficial last weekend of summer, though for me, I always say the last weekend of summer comes when it's SummerSlam weekend, and I feel like that's no different. I think that a lot of times when SummerSlam happens, SummerSlam ends super quick from there. So it does appear that we are live both on Twitter now as well as on YouTube Live. Make sure you guys let us know in the comment section below. I do see that the framing's a little off there, so bear with me, everybody. We're going to try our best here on the Twitter. This is a complete last-minute decision. I was just sitting there, had my phone available, and I was like, hey, may as well chime in on there and make sure that's all centered up. So we're going to try to make sure we do that and go from there. So let's see how the best way to kind of get that going there is. And it seems like we're good. So awesome. Before we get into last night's it's not looking at all. All right. Before we get into SummerSlam 1998, which we are going to rewatch in its entirety, and you can kind of go deal with both my commentary on that as well as on kind of where we're at, I wanted to talk about last night's All In show. All In Wrestling, hell of a show last night. If you are a fan of pro wrestling, go out of your way to watch this. I heard rumors that there's going to be this is available now on njpwworld.com, but this felt like a happening last night. This felt like if you were there live, man, it kills me that these tickets went on sale in the middle of Mother's Day dinner because I had the phone fumbling under the table and I wasn't able to get tickets. But I couldn't be happier for Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, and for all those fans that were in attendance yesterday. All In was awesome from start to finish. I thought the stuff on WGN America, the pre-show, was a lot of fun. Really thought that came across really, really well in terms of kind of how the I thought the WGN America show worked really well in terms of the Battle Royal, as well as the Briscoes and SoCal going at it. And I thought that, in particular, that Battle Royal was a lot of fun. You had some legends in there, Bully Ray, Tommy Dreamer, and then you had some guys who were kind of up and coming. And then the great twist at the end with Flip Gordon finally becoming All In and getting onto the show was awesome. And as I said on Twitter, at WatchWrestlePod, I was watching with my brother-in-law who's 18, and I think they were on the outside when Bully Ray immediately hit him with the powerbomb, and he kept saying, that Lucha's still in there, that Lucha's still in there, man, I hope that's Neville, I hope that's Neville. When he ripped off the mask and revealed himself to be Flip Gordon, my brother-in-law went completely nuts and forgot all about Neville and was super excited that now finally Flip Gordon was All In and had made the show. So really cool, and I thought it was a great little twist there, specifically if you're a fan of the Being the Elite program. It was great to have him there. And my shoot gig brother, if you will, is working over in HR. And I can tell you from going to different job fairs and different things to that extent, the people at WGN America, they love their wrestling. When they had Superstars, which was like a very little show that WWE did years ago, and I think still might film prior to maybe before Raw, I want to say. I know they do main event. I don't know if they still do Superstars, but they did for a while. Superstars was on the, I'm going to try to tilt this back just a little, and just because the feed on the Twitter is looking a little wonky, but figured what else. So the one of the things I thought that was really interesting about WGN America hosting that show is I know for a fact those guys love having pro wrestling on their show. Those guys are into it. Those guys are, you know, they're looking for a wrestling program to broadcast. And I just feel like based on how those ratings are going to go, I mean, when I looked at the schedule of stuff that was coming up on WGN America, it's a lot of reruns and strange looking shows. So if they could get a wrestling program that'll really be something, seems like we're already dying here on the vine here. Are we on here? Let's see here. Still working here. Doesn't seem like it is. Whatevs. If it is not working over on Twitter, jump on the YouTube link. I know we're working on there, and we'll try to get the Twitter going and make sure that in the future we can broadcast right on Twitter.com. So we'll see how that works, and if it does not work, if it doesn't seem like it's getting any better, then we'll ask out of that. So that is what it is. Figured why not give it a shot. We'll see if it goes, and hopefully it does. So in any event, all in though, the actual pay-per-view, it felt like the first time ECW was on pay-per-view. Obviously, back then it was very hard because WWE at the time was starting to do pay-per-views every month, so it was hard to convince the family to go ahead and order. Let's see here. We're not even. This is a disaster. The Twitter feed. I apologize about that. Let's see if that's going to work any better. Trying to move this along and center this out, and watching the actual feed as we speak does not look like it is working. Let's see, maybe over here might work a little better there. All right, if that doesn't work, we're going to ditch the Twitter feed. So we'll let you know right now if this works out, and if not, then we'll try it again a different time. Looks like that's a little better, though. All right, cool. So we are now on the air, both on Twitter.com, @WatchWrestlePod. We're going to be with you guys for the next 3 hours. We're on YouTube.com as well. Make sure if you're on YouTube, you hit that subscribe button, and I would love to have you guys subscribe. We're going to be back on the air a lot more frequently. I know that we've been away for the last little bit here, kind of post-Summerslam. It's just been craziness, both my personal life as well as, you know, sometimes I feel like, you know, the SummerSlam comes, the summer ends like boom, right after that. And so it took a little bit of time there. Had to miss last week's show, which was tough. But we're back here talking with you guys during Labor Day weekend. So good stuff, and happy to do that. So as I was saying though, about All In, it felt like the first ever ECW show. If you go back and you watch the first ever ECW pay-per-view, which is available on the network from 1997, barely legal, the crowd there, they felt like, damn, we're here. We are here for a pay-per-view. We're stoked. We can't believe this is a pay-per-view. We're all in this together. And they were really excited about it. The fact that that building looked super sold out. This didn't look like anything was, there were some seats there. It looked like people were kind of a little crammed in there, but it was like over 10,000 people. The crowd was so into it. I give a shout out to my boy with the pink hoodie. He was into everything. He was living and dying by every near fall. He had the hoodie up over his head. And, you know, whenever it was a super near fall, I thought that was really cool. So All In was great, though. Really happy that Joey Janela, I'm a big Joey Janela mark, and I was happy that Joey Janela got a chance to spotlight himself and have a great match there with Adam Page. Thought that was one of the top matches on the show. Being able to see Okada go in there with Marty Scurll. A lot of people love Marty Scurll due to his comedy on Being the Elite and doing the Backstreet Boys. He's actually a really good singer, so he's been able to kind of do his own thing there. But Marty Scurll is an awesome wrestler, dude. Like, he is phenomenal. And last night I thought his match with Okada stole the show. It was great. Awesome to see Okada in the States and in a venue like that. You don't see Okada in there every single day. So for him to be out there and doing his thing, it was really cool. And I thought that match was awesome. Love the Pentagon and Kenny Omega match. Those guys are madmen. To see them go out there and just tear each other apart. The sit out pile driver on the apron was nuts, and it was just insane. You can't put into words, but it was a big night, so I guess sometimes you bring that stuff up on a big night. But then, of course, Chris Jericho showing up there as Pentagon totally got me. For a little while, I was like, oh, I thought someone was going to show up. But then when it was revealed and when I think Don Callis And shout out to the commentary team yesterday. Don Callis, Excalibur, Ian Riccabati. Those guys were phenomenal. I thought they did an awesome job with the show. They took everything super serious. Ian kind of Riccabati rooting hard for Colt during the Battle Royal, since those guys call Ring of Honor together, was a lot of fun. And I enjoyed it, man. I thought it was really cool. And it was the commentary team was great, but really cool twist with Jericho showing up. And I think this is something cool that they did with this show yesterday, the Young Bucks and Cody and the All In guys, is they also did a little bit of promotion with other companies. They helped out their friends. Jericho shows up, and he, the big rumor was Chris Jericho will never wrestle for anybody, never show up and do anything for any company in the United States that's not WWE due to his loyalty to Vince McMahon. Well, clearly, whoever reported that wasn't coming from Chris Jericho, right? Because he was there, he was doing his thing, and enjoying himself kind of nonetheless there, and looked to be, then got his little plug in there for the Jericho Cruise, and now if you're sitting there, you're like, damn, I hope that's going to be streamed somewhere. So that was cool. They also did that with TNA. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. I don't watch TNA. I haven't watched Impact in a long time. I watched the last pay-per-view, but prior to that, it had been a long time. Other than Slammiversary, I hadn't seen Impact in a while. So being able to kind of see guys like El Bandito and Bandito Jr. and Ray Phoenix, that and Pentagon, and being able to see those guys in their element and having great matches was phenomenal last night. Really, really good stuff. And I thought the main event, it was tough that it was a little bit, you see, it's hard because I think one thing we all kind of saw yesterday, there's a lot of people that I saw on Twitter that were looking for streams, which was kind of disappointing. Like, you're supposed to be out there, you're supposed to be, showing support to you boys and showing support to wrestling in general. And if this show does well, more shows like it can do well. But I think the problem with that, I don't really necessarily hold it against folks who did that. I personally ordered the show. I did it right on the Fight TV app. I was going to do it on Honor Club, but honestly, I did Honor Club during WrestleMania weekend, and it totally assed out, and I missed the entire Ring of Honor show, and then had to order it on Fight after that. So couldn't take a chance with this show. So I went on Fight. Fight came through in the clutch again. So I ordered it on Fight, but some folks were searching for stream. And I really think the problem is that we've all gotten a little spoiled by WWE Network. Everything now being $10 for a month, and then you get the pay-per-view for free. Or if you're a new subscriber, or if you have unsubscribed, then now you want to resubscribe, you're basically being able to do that and are doing it really just for that one $10 fee. But that's not feasible for folks who are trying to do a standalone pay-per-view. So I do hope that you guys did support the show if you watched the show and ordered it, because it was a lot of fun, and it was cool to see those guys do their thing. Moment of the show, though, for me, on top of everything else, and I thought that the Joey Ryan stuff was really funny with the Peni, so to speak, and I also thought that I thought Stephen Amell did his thing for an actor in his first singles match. He did a great job. Yes, he was in there with Christopher Daniels, and probably you or I could have a solid match with Christopher Daniels if we did our thing with him. So he's about as big a pro as there could possibly be, but I thought that Christopher Daniels and Stephen Amell, they had a good match. They enjoyed themselves. They did their thing. So it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. I thought also that the moment, though, for me, Cody Rhodes winning the NWA title on his own show, the show he promoted, but he didn't put himself in the main event. He put his friends in his main event with people he thought gave him his big break. He said the Young Bucks had given him his big break on the Indies. Rey Mysterio had given him his big break in WWE. Obviously choosing Cody Rhodes to have a program with going into WrestleMania 27. And so it was good to see him kind of give back a bit there and help his boys out. But his match there, what a moment when he wins that NWA title, the title that his father, obviously the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, had held many, many years before. Super emotional. That's what you live about wrestling, man. For me, I love good matches, but I love good storytelling even more. And I thought that that was the moment of the show. So go out of your way, check out the show. I know that towards the end they were kind of running a little tight. That's another thing WWE Network has us spoiled with. If the show runs long, no worries, because we're on the WWE Network, so it could run for 45 minutes to an hour longer, and it just can continue. But I guess when other companies have television deals or deals with providers, deals with buildings, they had to be obviously out of there by 11 o'clock. They were able to do their thing though, and do so well. So, all right. That's all in. Go out of your way to see it. Hopefully they continue to do stuff like this, because I thought it was a lot of fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But Now we're going to turn our attention over to SummerSlam 1988. We're traveling 20 years back in time. I had talked about this years ago. We've only been doing this for 2 months. But when I was getting married back in March, and my buddy and I, Steve, my best man, were discussing the idea of doing a podcast together, which we do now currently do, Disney 101. It'll be airing tomorrow morning, live on YouTube Live. Check us out at Disney 101 Pod. But when I was talking about that, I suddenly got the idea to do a wrestling podcast as well. I was like, hey, I can kind of do this on my own, check out the equipment, make sure we're good to go for the Disney podcast, try it out, see how it goes. And in doing so, I've kind of fallen in love with the idea of doing this podcast and reliving some of my memories of different events that I've gotten to over time, and also kind of reliving that period of time as a wrestling fan and then sort of living my life from that period of time again. So that's really what I did. This show is one of the shows where I just could not wait to go on there, rewatch it together, and let's do it. So if you're watching along over on Twitter at WatchWrestlePod, if you're watching along on the YouTube channel, we are now going to get going. We're going to rewatch SummerSlam 1998. I've already got it queued up. 3 zeros, triple zeros. And the only unfortunate piece about this, and I'll say this quickly, the only unfortunate piece about this is that, unfortunately, there's no Highway to Hell. Freaking loved the Highway to Hell, and I've lost my view of the... There you go. I love the Highway to Hell. As a matter of fact, back in the day, I was probably a little punk kid. This was 1998, so I'm 11. So I'm just, I'm into the whole Green Day thing. I'm into kind of whatever's pop punky that's out there, and loving that stuff. This was the first time where, like, I heard AC/DC, Highway to Hell, and that became my go-to. That became my one of my new favorite brands of music was heavy metal, and it really stemmed from this show and from the build-up and the use of the Highway to Hell song. And it's a shame that on the network they don't have that. I understand they don't, because I'm sure it's super pricey to keep having that. But in any event, we'll talk more about that as we get into the show. So if you are following along here, if you have your network stream up there, make sure you go through that little gimmick, when they show like the little TV 14 graphic or whatever it is. Get through all that, and we're going to go jump on to the WWE Network. We're going to watch the show in real time, and let's do it. So we're going to pull the video up, and we're going to hit play in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And we are now watching SummerSlam 1998. The little World Wrestling Federation graphic is now up on the screen. And you will see on this show here how every single person on the roster matters. And obviously the big thing of this show, leading up to the show, was whether or not The Undertaker and Kane were in cahoots and working together. And there was also the time where now you have two of the biggest stars. You have The Undertaker, who's kind of that star who's been there now for almost 20 years, up toward the top of the card. Actually, at this point, he's only there about 8, 9 years. But he's toward the top of the card, and he's doing his thing. And now you have Stone Cold Steve Austin, who is about as hot as you can possibly get. And the entire build-up. This was a show, and if you remember, when we went back and we watched King of the Ring 1998, and what's great about doing this 20 years look back, you can kind of go through each month and see, who falls off, who's being built up at the time. You can go back and you can see that each month. But this is really the culmination of something that happened even prior to King of the Ring 98, when you had little penguin cup, by the way, drink some coffee, even though it's a little 12 noon, but hey, it is what it is. But you can go back, you can track the progress of The Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin. It really was the Highway to Hell throughout the entire summer of 1998. And they did, in my opinion, one of the best built shows in WWE history. And now you could hear the music there, which is obviously chimed in. There's no Highway to Hell. There's instead there's a variety of generic music they put on there, but JR is super stoked. New York is super stoked. And this was a show, this was one of them, where there's 3 shows in my life that I've missed that I, to this day, really hate that I missed. Maybe 4 shows to a certain extent. Number 1 is WrestleMania 28. I didn't go to that show. I had the idea to go to that show, and I wasn't able to make it, so that kind of sucked. Number 2, though, is WrestleMania 20. And when we get to WrestleMania 20 in March, I'll talk about not going to that show. Another one is Royal Rumble 2000, which I did not make it to, despite it being in Madison Square Garden and really wanting to go. That's a story for another time that we'll get to in January. I'll tell you that one's worth it. That's worth the months of hype there for that show. And the other one is this show right here, SummerSlam 1998. This was one of the first times as a kid that I really strongly remember really getting into the idea that you could go to a pay-per-view live. Prior to this, my parents had only taken me to house shows. I don't know why. I don't know if there was anything specific with the house show as to why it wasn't something that, but we just didn't go to TV tapings. We didn't go to anywhere else. We just went to no pay-per-views, no TV tapings. It was house shows. I went to a ton of house shows. If house shows were in the area, we'd normally go. But this particular show, I did not go. Let's listen to Val do his thing. All right. Usually, and Val is just brand new on the scene here. He was undefeated until 2 weeks prior to this show, when he went and he did an entire Kai and Tai. They did a deal. So basically, before this match, Val Venus was battling it out with Kai and Tai. Probably his most infamous feud because of the whole choppy choppy your pee-pee type deal. And yes, as promised, we were going to discuss the choppy choppy your pee-pee deal. The idea behind this was that Val Venus was undefeated, and he was doing a storyline where at the time he was battling it out with Kai and Tai. And Kai and Tai were guys who were really talented Japanese wrestlers who were brought in kind of to go against Taka Michinoku, who was the light heavyweight champion and really the only light heavyweight champion of note in WWE. They didn't really have any other ones. In my opinion, at the time, Taka was the first, and he held it for a really long period of time. So these guys were brought in to go against Taka, and Val ended up having to deal with them because he was sleeping with Mrs. Yamaguchi-san. I mean, Yamaguchi was the manager for the Kai and Tai, and his wife was this woman who was younger than him and very pretty. And Val took a liking to her and started to bang her, I guess, for lack of a better term. And so he does this thing with Miss Yamaguchi-san, and then this causes an issue with Kai and Tai. And Kai and Tai now goes against Val. They have this whole deal, and this leads up to the deal where they, Raw literally, one of the episodes of Raw ends where Kai and Tai, in one of their matches, they capture Val Venus. They bring him to the back. Taka turns on Val, and it's revealed that Taka's sister is actually Mrs. Yamaguchi-san. You're following the bouncing ball here? So now Taka's now in Kai and Tai. Kai and Tai is now four guys. Mince Teo, Dick Togo, Sho Funaki, who you probably know, the guy who had the longest tenured run in WWE, and Taka Michinoku, led by Yamaguchi-san. And this leads to an idea where they capture him, they bring him to the back. Yamaguchi-san says he's going to chop the big Valboski, so to speak. You can use your imagination as to what that means. And in doing so, they bring him to the back, and it actually ends with Val Venus, hands up in the air, and you see his back, and you see Kai and Tai there. Security's trying their best to break in and do their deal where they kind of get Val and save him, so to speak. But the lights go out, and you hear or like some like snip sound, and Raw ends. And for the next week, we have no idea if Val Venus, had his genitals chopped off. We have no idea where it's at. But they build up for the next week a press conference where Val Venus is going to address this, and he's going to do so with the aid of John Wayne Bobbitt. Now, if you don't know who John Wayne Bobbitt is, he's someone who became famous in the mid-'90s because his wife, Lorena Bobbitt, had actually chopped off Little Wayne Bobbitt, if you will, and threw it into a field, and then they had this major search looking for his penis. So you had John Wayne Bobbitt there doing his thing, and you had the you know, he was with Val, and it was revealed that Val ended up not getting his dick chopped off, thank God. And yeah, so Val's in this major rivalry with all of Kai and Tai, and he's undefeated. And this leads up to an episode of Raw about 2 weeks before this. You can see Vladimir, the superfan, sitting in the front row there. Of course, Vladimir, the superfan, is sitting in the front row. But Val ends up where Val goes through a gauntlet of all the members of Kai and Tai and destroys the first two. Destroys Minsteo, destroys Shofunaki, has a little bit of a back and forth with Dick Togo, but I mean, they kill Kai and Tai. He beats all three of them. Gets up to Taka, and I remember assuming he beat Taka and thinking, wow, they really jobbed out and got rid of Kai and Tai quickly. But instead, he actually loses to him. And Taka beats him, and it's kind of the end of the feud. We don't really get much of a payoff from that. Val gets rid of Miss Yamaguchi-san during that press conference, by the way, saying that no woman's worth that much trouble. This is also, remember, this is anything but the PG era. I talked about a story not long ago where one of my assistants had gone to SmackDown, a part of Brooklyn, when it was in town last weekend. She went with her brother and his kids. They had a great time. And afterwards, the kids were so surprised, as they see Edge here, still very early in his run. He's had exactly one Raw match to his name. He's had a couple matches on Heat. Still very, very green. But one of the things that's really kind of interesting about this is, they went to that show a couple weeks ago, and the brother had not allowed his kids to watch wrestling before that, and only allowed them to go because his sister had gotten free tickets, so why not? In any event, what this ends up leading to is the brother ends up saying how surprised he was that there was no cussing during the episode of Raw, and how surprised he was that there was no profanity, that there was no nudity, that there was none of that. Well, all that stuff that the brother was fearing is really at an apex here in the summer of 1998, starting to get towards that. Remember, we reviewed Fully Loaded 1998, where Sable rips off her top to reveal just two handprints on her chest. Well, now we're doing this deal where sex appeal, profanity, all that is violence is all at a peak in the summer of 1998, but WWE is never hotter. But this match here really doesn't make any sense. Val, again, he was in that feud with Kai and Tai. D'Lo Brown is a member of the Nation, along with Mark Henry, the Godfather, though Godfather's kind of transitioning out of the Nation of Domination. So it's really more Mark Henry, D'Lo, Owen, and The Rock. And they're in a major feud with DX, but as you'll see here, despite the fact of that feud, only The Rock and Triple H have a match on this show. Owen Hart is in a Lions Den match with Ken Shamrock. Mark Henry isn't on the show. He's kind of just the second to The Rock, similar to how China is for Triple H. X-Pac goes against Jeff Jarrett. They kind of have a small sub-feud that's been going on, along with the Nation DX feud. D'Lo is defending his European Championship against Val. But this was one of these matches where, like, it was just announced. Like, it wasn't even like, hey, get ready for this. This wasn't even like, this is post Event Center with, Todd Pettengill or Doc Hendricks. This is after that. So this is literally just D'Lo Brown and Val Venus kind of doing their thing, and it's just announced randomly during a match. Oh, and Val be going for the European Championship at SummerSlam. There wasn't, like, any sort of build-up for this match being announced. And even though this does feel random, these are two of the guys who, like, when you think about WWE mid-card and kind of at its peak, I'd say you'd be hard-pressed to find a mid-card that was featured more prominently than towards late 1998. You have guys like D'Lo Brown. Val Venus just made his debut a couple of months prior. You see Edge there. Edge is just making his debut. On Sunday Night Heat, earlier that night, is when you have guys like Gangrel making their debut. He didn't debut there, but he's only a couple weeks into his run. So they were really kind of building up all these different characters, and everyone had something that they meant, that meant something. And I mean, that's a testament to, and I know he's not everyone's favorite person, but to Vince Russo. That's something Vince Russo did do really well. And all accounts for that, Vince Russo did a good job in really kind of promoting everybody and making sure everyone had something going on. And even if it was like a feud like that was completely silly, like currently Legion of Doom, or in a storyline where Hawk is wasted every day, and Hawk, one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time, can't make it to the ring because he's drunk as shit every single match. So that was their storyline, but everyone had something. And Val was somebody who was really prominently featured both on Raw and SmackDown. And he would transition into a feud not long after this with Dustin Runnels. If you don't know Dustin Runnels, that's Dustin Rhodes, Goldust, who's now doing the period of time where he was giving up the Goldust stuff and he had turned into an evangelist. And he was reminding everyone that he was coming back and prompting everyone to turn off Raw before bad segments. Hey, rather than watching this episode of Raw here where it's being promoted that Sable's coming out, why don't you turn off the TV and go snuggle up with the book? That was Goldust's gimmick at the time as Dustin Rhodes. And obviously didn't get over very well. But he did play it well. He did play the kind of that evangelist well. And then at the end of every one of his speeches, they would say, the proceeding has been paid for by the evangelists against sports and entertainment. So that was what Val was going against next. But then he also had a sub-feud going on Sunday Night Heat with Mario Lopez. Now, if you're thinking, Mario Lopez? AC Slater? Yes, that's right, AC Slater. This was during a period of time where Val was, every time he'd see a beautiful lady, he would go in there. And at the time, also, USA would utilize Raw to promote their next shows. So this was a lot of shows like Pacific Blue. Pacific Blue was a show that ran from 1996 to 2000, but in 1998 they added some cast members, including Mario Lopez. The show basically was Baywatch with bikes, is pretty much what it was. Baywatch cops with bikes, and Mario Lopez was on the show. And they did a deal on Sunday Night Heat where basically Mario Lopez came over to Val to shake his hand, and Val pie-faced Lopez, and Lopez jumped over the barricade, took down Val, literally took him out, started pounding him in the head, and they followed up on it a couple of weeks. They did some things where they caught up with Mario Lopez on the set, trying to be like, hey, what's the deal with you and Val? They followed up with Val Venus, and it was bizarre because here's Val, the guy they're promoting is undefeated, and he's being taken out by AC Slater, who's at the time maybe 24 or so, 25, somewhere around there, and he's taking out one of the up-and-coming stars in the middle of Sunday Night Heat. So it was kind of bizarre. I had mentioned her in one of our earlier podcasts at the time. Now, my friends and I at the time are going around and we're acting like we're the nation of domination. Yeah, my buddy Michael, who was The Rock. You have my buddy David Yoon, who was was Mark Henry, a little bit of a chunkier guy. And I was D'Lo Brown. And I thought D'Lo was awesome. I loved the hell out of D'Lo Brown. I thought sky was the limit for D'Lo. He's a super smart guy, certified public accountant. It seemed like he, could have been that guy to maybe break through and get towards that top of the card. And it never quite happened, which was quite, unfortunately for him, here he is, opening match here at SummerSlam. By the time next year's SummerSlam rolls around, he's both the Intercontinental and the European champion. And then, unfortunately, in October of '99, he draws on his neck, breaks his neck, and is paralyzed from that. And D'Lo never really was the same. Bruce Pritchard's mentioned on his podcast that, everyone kind of understood that things happened, but that was something that D'Lo never fully got over. And you can't blame him. And the story was D'Lo was in the hospital with Draws all night, making sure Draws was okay, wanted to be there for him. He felt absolutely awful about it. He's about as good a dude. I met him a couple of times. He's about as good a dude. I used to listen to him on the Between the Ropes podcast with Brian Fritz on the radio show, on the radio show. Now, this finish here is pretty lame. But first off, I actually think the match is super solid. This is a match I've watched back many a time. Always had a big kick out of this match. I think both these guys are pretty solid in the ring. I know it's not rated very high, but it's a match I've always really enjoyed. Because again, I said I was in Florida and we couldn't get the pay-per-view in Florida. So we went to Florida to visit my grandparents, and my father ordered the pay-per-view, and he said, "You're not going to believe what happened in the Val Venus D'Lo Brown match." And I couldn't, and immediately in my head, I started going through, you tell me you're not going to believe what happened, I immediately start going, somebody turned, somebody made a return. Somebody to that extent. Somebody made a debut. Well, this was one of the deals where my father tells me you're not going to believe what happens at the end of the Val Venus D'Lo Brown match. And one of the deals that you'll see what happens because it's about to come up here in just a minute. There you go. D'Lo trying to. So this is the move, by the way, if D'Lo does try to do it, that he did paralyze, draws on, and he almost paralyzed Val on. God, they should have had him stop using the move on that one. That was awful. He dropped him right on his head there. Eek. But yeah, he did a running powerbomb. I was not at the show. The show where D'Lo does injured draws was actually in Nassau Coliseum on October 5th. And originally I had tickets for my birthday, which is on October 6th, and I ended up not going. I don't remember what happened, but that would have been tough to kind of see that. I'm always kind of grateful that I wasn't there for that, because that had to be really tough to see. I know people who were there, and it's pretty scarring to see an injury like that. So, I mean, this year, these guys have been going on now about 18 minutes or so, maybe about 15 minutes. And are really, I mean, this is kind of being built up as like a big-time match. We're even doing the hardcore spot where they both get up, they both look at each other. And that's the reason why this is such a lame finish. D'Lo, the chest protector, by the way, which is actually available at his new Elite figure. He comes with a removable chest protector. Gotta love it. Yeah, he's complaining about his sternum. So Val is getting the chest protector on himself. Crowd is super into it. There's Jim Corderas, referee for a long, long time in WWE. And he's trying to get Val off, and he crotches Val Venus. Terrible. So lame. Like, why is he? D'Lo's worn that the entire match. Val puts it on, and Corderas trips Val and crotches him on the apron. Crowd loving that he's thrown the official on the ground, by the way. But instead, this gets thrown out, and it's a DQ. Really lame. And D'Lo escapes with the belt, which at the time I really loved the fact that D'Lo was the European champ. I think he kind of brought the European title up a level a bit by him having it because of his kind of association with The Rock. And he's the guy who defeated Triple H to get that title. So that was a big-time deal at the time. And D'Lo keeping the belt. I do not recall the European Championship being green, by the way. That's kind of cool. I don't remember that at all. So this is what my father was talking about, that Val attacked the official. And I remember watching this and being completely confused, wondering what my dad was talking about. And when I kind of talked to him about it, he was like, oh, you didn't see him attack the referee? I bet that's the last time we see Val for quite some time. It was so random that my dad thought this was such a big deal. But, I mean, he does hit it with the money shot, and it really isn't even followed up on. It's just like, hey, it is what it is. And really, I think that was just a way to protect both guys. But if you are going to protect both guys and still give them a spot on the card, why put them together? Again, they weren't really in a feud with each other. Someone's got a homemade shirt. Goldberg sucks. I love, by the way, this old school. Boy, and they really like that girl. They've shown her at least 3 or 4 times with the 316 shirt. Hey, WWE. This is one of my favorite Mick Foley interviews here. Let's listen in. Make sure that. All right. They continue to check in with Mick. This was not the one that I remembered. Yeah, so this is pretty disappointing here. This is another WWE Network edit. For whatever reason, even though the Oddities theme song is on one of the WWE albums, I believe it's the third album, WWE The Music Volume 3, they have the Insane Clown Posse doing their song. That, for some reason, is not a song they can play anymore. On all the episodes of Raw, they've gotten rid of the Insane Clown Posse's music. It's replaced with something really lame. And it's so awkward because you can see the crowd singing along to the Insane Clown Posse's version of the Oddities theme. But it's not allowed to be played here. So you can see that the Insane Clown Posse is outside the ring, and the crowd loved them, obviously. Crowd's super into them. But what ended up happening is that entire live entrance and them doing their thing is taken off of the network version of this. So instead, the Oddities are just randomly in the ring as Kai comes down. There are some edits like that on the network that kill me, but that one specifically, because I remember that being such a big time thing. It's why I still have some of those old tapes. Someday I'll have to go back and watch the old tapes and see what exactly has been taken out. But that was what we did at the time. We ordered the pay-per-views and made sure we recorded them because of the fact that if people had, if we had done a deal where somebody had not, I would obviously want that in the future. And we would not be able to do that if it wasn't recorded. I'd then have to go out and buy the Coliseum Home video release or the video release, and parents were not paying for the show twice. So thankfully, we recorded the show right off pay-per-view, put it on tape, and I had a collection for the ages there. Speaking of the Oddities, if you're wondering who they are, Giant Silva might actually be, and God bless him, but he might be the worst wrestler in the history of wrestling. He was not good at all. If you thought the Khali was bad, you should go watch some Giant Silva, and you'll get to see him soon. This guy in the ring, Golga, who has a water, and he's disinfecting his shoe with the water, is John Tenta. May he rest in peace. If you're wondering who John Tenta is, also known as the Shark in WCW and Earthquake in WWE. There's also Kurgan, who's standing on the outside of the ring. Kurgan was Kurgan, or the Interrogator, in the Truth Commission. And even though he was a big-time scary heel who didn't show much emotion, as a member of the Oddities, he danced around, and now he's a fun-loving babyface. And I had mentioned how Kai and Tai were some of the most talented wrestlers. You can clearly see that the bloom is off the rose in terms of taking these guys serious. Here they are, being mocked for their height. There's 4 of them against 3 of the Oddities, and not even competitive. So you could tell that the bloom, again, is off the rose for Kai and Tai. Speaking of WWE The Music Volume 3, that's what me and my friends always say is the peak of all things WWE. The green disc. That was at the absolute peak of all things WWF and the Attitude Era, because that album had the music of Edge and Christian, I Think You Know Me, that music. They had the music of Gangrel, they had the music of Val Venus, the Oddities, DX, The Rock, all those guys. That is a fantastic album. And has a lot of really great kind of themes there. Insane Clown Posse, they're guys who kind of became popular because of the fact that they're self-made. They created their entire brand on their own. They're rappers, and they did their thing on their own. And in doing so, really did a good job, in my opinion, of branding themselves. And to this day, still have the Gathering of the Juggalos and JCW, Juggalo Championship Wrestling. And remained one of the more popular acts for years, and later on would even have matches in WCW and really made a name for themselves. And they were somebody who WWE really took a liking to and would kind of bring on the shows from time to time. Unfortunately, though, their friggin' track is unable to be used. I'm guessing it has to do with something with licensing or something where they're able to kind of have the rights to this music for a period of time. However, they can only do it for a certain amount of time. So this is finally the great, what's called the Great Khali. Giant Silva making his debut, and Kai is petrified of him. Kurgan is really trying hard to dance and get himself going. As silly as Kurgan may look, I'm almost positive he had a role in the movie 300 and became a pretty decent actor there. Had a little decent acting run, kind of in who he was. And good for him. This is Dick Togo, probably the most mocked name in all of wrestling. He's of no. And later on, by the way, in this show, I am going to talk about a show that I did attend, even though I did not attend this particular show. Look at it. I mean, total comedy, total Andre the Giant spots, which is crazy that you wonder if they saw something in this guy, that they were giving him all of Andre the Giant's old spots. Here he goes. He's going to do the splash in the corner, the big hams around the neck, the big chop. He's dressed awful. I mean, the worst ring gear probably of all time. And by the way, you'll also notice on the outside, Luna Vachon is a part of the group. And this is a group that I believe started as heels. And, oh, there you go. See? The Andre the Giant spot. The guy's clearly not ready to be in the ring. What the world is that? But yeah, they started off as heels and then got popular, and they ended up pairing Sable with them. These guys were Sable's friends, and like anyone believes these guys are Sable's friends. Very bizarre, very weird. Here's your light heavyweight champion. One of the most, probably, maybe the best wrestler they have on the roster, being thrown around like a piece of junk. Even though it's great to see that everyone had a spot on this card, this match does not age well. Should mention that before the show. So Luna Vachon, she's down there. She's their manager. She's with the Oddities. And you'll also see that she's carrying around a little Eric Cartman doll from the show South Park. At the time in 1998, summer of 98, not only was WWE super popular, but South Park was also at its peak and unbelievably popular. When I tell you that everyone watched South Park, it was like the most popular thing in the world. The Christmas episode with Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh, all the characters, Chef with the salty balls. And so WWE really found themselves, WWF at the time, really found themselves in a situation where they would try to kind of co-brand almost and find a way to cross over with South Park and take advantage of both of their levels of popularity. When we do continue down the 20-year journey and eventually get to WrestleMania 15, we'll take a look back at the WrestleMania party that was held the night before, and Chef, the voice of Chef, Isaac Hayes, may he rest in peace, was actually on that show, and he performed Chef Salty Balls. So pretty cool little transfer over there between the two. But the idea is that Golga's a huge fan of South Park as well, and loves Eric Cartman, and that's why he has the doll. That's why he's got the shirt on. Unfortunately for John Tenta, Golga, Earthquake, he had passed away in 2006. He had bladder cancer. And I remember at the time, this was before I really became super into the idea of podcasting. I'd listen to only Between the Ropes in 2003, but I'd also follow along with WrestleCrap.com, which still exists to this day, and they still do a great job over there, Artie Reynolds. And they did a deal where on WrestleCrap.com, every single week they'd have a new induction of something that was cracking in the world of pro wrestling. And for a while, they'd induct a couple different deals of John Tenta and John Tenta's characters, Earthquake, Golga, everything. And eventually, John Tenta appeared on WrestleCrap Radio with Artie Reynolds and discussed all these different things and became a major friend of WrestleCrap, and just came across like one of the sweetest guys of all time. And if you go back and you watch Golga, by the way, super athletic. Look at him there, did the barrel roll to the apron. He's the workhorse of the group, by the way. If you notice, he's in there longer than everybody. The other two guys, train wreck worthy. But Came across like a really great guy, Golga. And if you notice with him, even though if you look at him back in SummerSlam 1990, which maybe we'll get to next year, he looks like he's a guy who's 40, 50 years old going against Hulk Hogan. Dude was only like 23, maybe 27 tops. So it was pretty interesting to see. So pretty good stuff. Seeing that the feed is still going strong over on Twitter. You can check me out at WatchWrestlePod. That is an extreme close-up, to say the least. We're going to have to figure out something different for that because that looks way too close. But for now, it's something we decided to do. And cool that you can just broadcast right on Twitter like that. And maybe it'll be something we continue to do in the future. Big splash by Golga. He covers all of them. Oddities win. Let's listen to the generic music. No, they shot out right away because I guess they just chopped out the entire so they chopped out right out of that real quick. But you'll see there, if you're watching along on the network, that the WWF bus, this was actually something that throughout all of New York City, the promotion for SummerSlam 1998 was really building up this idea of SummerSlam taking over New York City, similar to how it does now. But so you see the bus there, and the bus has Undertaker and Stone Cold kind of battling it out across New York City. I think Undertaker's got like the Statue of Liberty. Stone Cold has the Empire State Building, and they're battling it out. And those buses literally would go through all throughout town, and living right here, even in Queens, New York. Oakland Gardens, to be exact, back then. Don't live there now, but back in the day, I did. And they had those buses coming through town all the time. And I remember just marking out, like little kid jumping for joy. Dad, there's a SummerSlam bus. There's a SummerSlam bus. And that bus was just MTA. That, the buses were just kind of overdone and built to show as a deal there. There's X-Pac. X-Pac going against LJ Jeff Jarrett here. Storyline being that X-Pac, again, this was kind of a sub-feud that kind of started out. Jeff Jarrett at the time was still in his... This is bizarre. It seems like they're really playing X-Pac's Titantron video is kind of taking over the screen here for an inordinate amount of time. All right, there you go. Weird. And there you go. X-Pac's got Fink with him. Always, there's something always funny I found about this. So if you're wondering why the hell Fink is there with X-Pac, it started a deal where Jeff Jarrett is transitioning from music entertainer Jeff Jarrett to Don't Tick Me Off Jeff Jarrett. And one of the things that he was doing in this was he had Tennessee Lee with him, who was one of the most awful characters in WWE. He used to be in WCW as well, so he's talked about in the past. He ditches Tennessee Lee, thank God. And as Howard Finkel doing the suck it with the pyro. Love Howard Finkel. Heard he's not in the best of health either, and so I hope he's doing okay because I love the thing. So, in any event, let's listen to X-Pac. The thing doing the suck it, that's good stuff. So yeah, so Jeff Jarrett is making the transition. He ditches Tennessee Lee, thank goodness. See you later. He's Colonel Rob Parker in WCW. The guy was awful in WWE, in my opinion. I thought he was the worst. Now he's got the Godwins with him. There's Southern Justice. There is Muscle. The Godwins actually do look pretty badass, walking around in suits as like straight security type looking dudes. Good stuff there. And the storyline here is now Jeff Jarrett is shaving people's heads. And now you see he also has suddenly now on the back of his guitar, he's got the Don't Piss Me Off on there. And that would have, the storyline here is also that Jeff Jarrett's wife at the time, this is the real story, was going through cancer. She had cancer, and Jeff Jarrett wanted to shave his head to kind of be in unity with her. And so that is one of the reasons as to why they had this match. X-Pac, by the way, we just heard JR, only 26 years old. You forget how young he was when he started as the 1-2-3 kid. Whew. Big drop kick over the top. These guys are both solid. This match I always remember being really good. I don't remember what matches after this, but I'll always remember that going back as a kid, I rewatched the first 3 matches about 1,000,000 times at SummerSlam '98, and then bounced around, usually watched the ladder match, which was my favorite. We'll be interested to see how that ladder match holds up today. But the idea here was on Sunday Night Heat, before the show, Jeff Jarrett and Southern Justice attacked Howard Finkel, held him down, and shaved his head. And I always find this funny that now Howard Finkel is in the corner of X-Pac, and he's wearing a DX shirt, and he's super into X-Pac. But nobody came out to help poor Howard on Sunday Night Heat. They just didn't give a shit. Howard got his head shaved. No one was there to have his back. And it's a shame because it's like, if I'm Howard, I'm not coming out as being your second. You weren't there for me. I just screwed X-Pac over if I was Howard. Screw that shit. Love Howard Finkel, though. I have 1,000,000 great Howard Finkel stories that I'll sell and I'll talk about here and there, but I'll tell one now. When we went to WrestleMania 32, and the reason why is because I don't know that we'll ever watch WrestleMania 32 on here. That is not one of my favorite WrestleManias. It's a shame, too, because I have a lot of great stories about that weekend, and that weekend was a lot of fun. But one story I'll always remember, running into the airport to catch the flight with my wife, my girlfriend at the time, was probably contemplating ending the relationship because, again, I had made us very late to the airport due to my procrastination. We had gotten to the airport, and they're literally calling our names over the loudspeaker that we have to get on the plane. They're boarding the plane, blah, 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 blah. And we bolt down the runway. We're running down as quick as we possibly can. We're doing our thing. Get on the airplane, gasping for air, head down, and I hear, "Don't worry about it, Tommy. No worries now, because now it's WrestleMania." It's a bad Howard Finkel impression, but one of the things that you'll know is A, told me not to worry about it. He was the great start to WrestleMania. He was sitting front row of our plane, and B, he knew my name. How did he know my name? From a brief encounter I had with the guy at a Dean Ambrose signing. Howard was the master of ceremonies. He was doing a lot of different trivia contests, really getting the crowd amped up. And afterwards, there was a meet and greet where you can go and meet him. And he was there, and he had a bunch of packs of cards handing out to different fans. And he's really just one of the coolest guys around. I told him the story from the WrestleMania 10 Fan Fest, which I'll hold off on. I think we will get to WrestleMania 10 this year. So I got to tell Howard Finkel that story. He loved it. He got a good laugh out of it. And remembered my name, which is crazy. This was like in the middle of 2015, maybe early 2015. Met him very briefly, and then showed up there to get on the plane, WrestleMania 32, and remembered us. And he was sweet. He told us not to worry. And everyone else on the plane was giving us the stink eye because of how late we were. But here's Howard Finkel, who has to get down there for WrestleMania festivities, and didn't care. It was super cool. I love, by the way, the entrance, the old school entrance. I mentioned it briefly. The Madison Square Garden hard cam old school entrance where you can just see the hard cam entrance the whole time behind the wrestlers, behind the talent. I always appreciated it because if anyone was doing a run-in or anything, you could always see them coming out. And actually, during Sunday Night Heat, before the show, when the Nation came down to the ring and Rock started cutting a promo, you could see people coming from the back and running. They cut away super quick and then showed the run-in of DX running in and attacking the Nation. But you could always see if someone was coming out. And I'd always like to kind of pay special attention to see maybe if you can catch like an agent in the background walking through or fixing something, or somebody walking to the back with like a prop or something. Always really got a kick out of that stuff. But it was something different, and it was something that signified Madison Square Garden. Referee Mike Chioda there. He's still with the company, and we're now in 2018. So he's had quite a run, over 20 years, and probably close to 30, if not 30 years. You'll see here, one of the things that I always appreciate about this as well is this is during the period of time where DX is, by the way, Howard's got the bow tie right above the DX shirt. Doing all he can. The crowd actually relatively dead for this match. And I think it has to do with the fact that, you know, again, they had DX in a major feud with the Nation. And rather than giving X-Pac a match with, let's say, an Owen Hart or something like that, they instead did a deal where Owen had kind of did something where Owen had a deal already with Ken Shamrock. Kind of stuck with that and allowed Owen Hart to kind of do his deal there. And so instead, X-Pac's in this random match with Jeff Jarrett. Meanwhile, they kind of just started this feud out of nowhere. On Sunday Night Heat, no less. This wasn't even a feud that was started on Raw. It was started on Sunday Night Heat. I've mentioned Heat a couple times. I should probably mention this is during the birth of Sunday Night Heat. This is still within its first month of existence. It was really a vehicle to kind of promote Shane McMahon. And at the time, I thought Shane was the coolest guy around. Partially because at the time, being a youngster, everyone would always say that's what I looked like when he started making his appearance on television. And so I thought Shane was so cool. Shane was one of my favorites right from the beginning. He'd always show up to Sunday Night Heat doing commentary. He was a different voice and would always have a couple of women on his shoulder. And he was always referred to as the heir apparent. It's been a while since we've seen Shane. I don't know if he's been there since Mania. But they did a deal where basically it was 1 hour every Sunday night at 7 o'clock. And it was on the USA Network. And I think the show was recorded, though I also do remember a couple of times where it was promoted as a live Sunday Night Heat. And I think you can go and watch Sunday Night Heat, and then the rest of the show would be like a house show with like the bigger stars. Because it wasn't, even from the start, you'd have an appearance or two from the bigger stars. But even a month in, I mean, the matches themselves were kind of lackluster. It would be segments with the bigger stars continuing their storylines. But the matches on Sunday Night Heat were usually, you know, with the likes of Too Cold Scorpio, Farouk, DOA, Vader, who is ridiculous still that they couldn't find anything better to do with Vader. We are, by the way, since we're just trying this out here, I am going to end the feed right now on the Twitter. This is something I hope to continue to do. I want to continue to do this, and hopefully if you guys liked it, let me know on Twitter at WatchWrestlePod. We're going to end that feed right now on Twitter, but if you're watching along on Twitter, jump on over, cruise on over to YouTube. I have it linked on the top of our page at WatchWrestlePod, pinned right to the top. Hit that link and do what you got to do on that. That could be a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys will be into that. And we're going to say so long on the Twitter feed, simply because I think I don't know how the phone's coming out. I don't know how the audio sounds anyway. I want to make sure the audio is up to snuff. We'll say so long on the Twitter feed. But continue to join us right here on YouTube. We're going to watch the remainder of SummerSlam 1998 up until the end of the show. And hopefully you guys are digging what we're doing. So we'll say so long on the Twitter. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. And, that's a little easier there. I can actually see myself. You know, we'll stick with the Twitter. Now that I could realize, I finally realized that I flipped the camera. You can tell I'm not the most tech savvy. Did not realize on the Twitter feed that you can flip the camera. So we'll stick with it. We will stick with the Twitter. It was driving myself crazy to see the feed right here on YouTube and not be able to see how it was coming across on Twitter. So hello, Twitterverse. We're going to keep logging in. We'll stick with it as long as we can right here on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. And look at that. That was probably a tech for dummies there. But we're still live on the Twitter. We're still live on YouTube. And we're watching SummerSlam 1998. Bang! X Factor. I think that's the end of your match or close to it. I think it's time to shave some head. That didn't sound right. Here comes Southern Justice in the background. You see them doing their thing. I always mentioned how you could always see the people in the background making their way down. So right before they make their way to the ring, you'd see them come to the entrance, and then they, boom, flip off, go to a different camera. And in doing so, I love this, by the way. Here's the ref. He doesn't hear the major explosion of the guitar behind him because he's too distracted with Southern Justice there. That's your 1, 2, 3. That's the end of that match, and that's probably okay that it's the end of that match. Not a match that I remember as well as or as vividly back in the day. The Outlaws are ready to kind of do their thing here, and the New Age Outlaws, by the way, you'll see them here. They're right up there. There we go, perfect. Now we're looking good on both feeds, and now here comes the rest of the roster who didn't have any role on the show. You've got Draws, you've got the Headbangers, and you've got X-Pac and the Outlaws, and it's time to shave Jeff Jarrett's head. Now, of course, even though they shave his head here, he shows up looking about as good or better on Raw with a pretty nice-looking crew cut, which is typical for people who shave their head. And I think Bruce Pritchard's mentioned his frustration with the gimmick that other than Vince McMahon, most of these shaved heads, the guy would never shaved head. He would come back and he would look even better than he did prior going in. So it was weird. Another Mosh is trying to give Sergeant Slaughter the hair there. Howard is yelling support. What a pushover Howard looks like, God bless him, in this thing. The guy got his head shaved literally hours beforehand. None of these guys came out to help him. And not good. Yeah, the Clippers, they couldn't get the Clippers going, so they just went back to the old scissors to chop off Jeff Jarrett's hair. And there you go. The Outlaws, we'll see them later. They have a match with Kane and X-Pac, and that's really what I was kind of saying was, oh, look, Howard is so happy. Look at Howard Finkel. He's got the hair. He's got Jeff Jarrett's hair on his head. Thrasher's got all of Jeff's hair on his head, too. He's got a full hair of head. Full hair, head of hair. These are probably like your undercard. Droz was somebody they were doing something with, though. And I thought actually he was coming across as a pretty fun babyface. They were actually doing a deal called Droz's World, where it was a takeoff of Real World. And, you know, this is the true story of 7 strangers picked to live in a house, blah, blah, blah. Well, Droz would have his own, and it would say this is a true story of one man and his pets and his tattoos. And we're following him along. And they would show little clips of him living life and puking, and they'd get like people's opinion on him. I don't know how many of these ended up. Yeah, there's Method Man. Why Method Man has nosebleeds, I'm not sure. This is when Method Man's popularity, I mean, he was popular before this in Wu-Tang Clan. But I'd say in terms of him being both, they had a movie, him and Redman. They had a couple different TV shows based on them, I believe. They were also a big part of TRL. So I always thought this was a big time for Method Man. Late 90s, he's about as big a star as you can get. But look at the Godwins there at Southern Justice. They're looking pretty cool. And there you go. And there's Doc Hendricks. I'll talk about this in a sec. Let's listen to Doc. The Rock and Michael Cole. Rock is really getting over here. Such a great freaking promo. So right now you're getting to, by the way, that Lion's Den. We'll talk about it during Lion's Den match because I want to talk about Mark Mero here and Jacqueline. Thankfully, the end here of the feud between Mark Mero and Sable, that really has gone on far too long at this point. I think it has definitely become a little long in the tooth. Sable, in my opinion, had kind of outgrown the feud with Mark Mero. I think her star had really kind of exploded, whereas Mark's kind of stayed where it was at. Also didn't go too good for Mark, and we'll talk more about it later. In the Brawl for All, despite him being a Golden Gloves boxer, he lost to a pretty blown up Bradshaw. Granted, Bradshaw's about double his size, but neither here nor there. So the storyline here is that Sable is going to be picking a mystery partner to come out and join her for this tag match against Mark Mero and Jacqueline, right? So one of the things that's kind of cool about this is Sable is doing a deal where she is supposed to pick someone. And a lot of people think it's going to be one of the oddities. And if we're being honest, seeing that match with the oddities, it would have made more sense for Sable to pick one of the oddities. If she had picked Giant Silva to have his first match, maybe that would have been something they could have built up on. But instead, it was like, oh shit, who's going to be Sable's partner? And on Sunday Night Heat, Sable even came down and teased who the partner was going to be, but wouldn't outright say it. She just made it clear it wasn't going to be one of the oddities to kind of build up who this person could be who was going to be her partner. The choice, though, was a little peculiar at the time. For those of you who don't know, I'll let you find out rather than giving you a 20-year-old spoiler. And let's listen in on Sable. All right, short and sweet. And it was Edge. Very early into his run, Edge was Sable's partner. That's Faith No More guy. All the famous fans from the late 90s who were always at the shows. You could see the old security, unfortunately, passed away. That big brolic-looking guy, Jim, who was the WWE security guard, kind of helping to lead Edge through the people there. It's always something really interesting that they never did with the Shield. You never saw like the security leading the way for them. They'd always kind of just do their thing. But Edge was pretty disappointing because they built this up as such a big deal, and they bring out Edge, who at the time had only been in the company for like a hot minute, and now here he comes and he's doing something here with Sable. However, I will say the SummerSlam Heritage figure, I always kind of bring this back to the Mattel figures, the SummerSlam Heritage Elite figures just put out one of Edge from this time period with the black pants, Edge written one way face up, Edge written upside down the other way, and pretty cool nonetheless. It was cool that they gave Edge the spot. I just don't know why they had to build it up as a mystery partner for it to just be someone random. So one of my big things and one of the big, every year we'd always go to. It always seemed like we'd go to Florida during SummerSlam for many years. Like I'd talk probably from like SummerSlam 1992 on until we stopped going in 2001. We'd go every single year, and we'd miss SummerSlam, and it would drive me completely insane. So one of the deals was I'd always do my best to avoid spoilers. I hate when you don't see a pay-per-view live and something gets spoiled, because you're like, damn, that sucks. You know, you don't like that. That's not good. But Edge and Mark Merrow doing their thing here, huh? Not bad. They did a deal where you can kind of watch along, and you could. So I hated when this pay-per-views would be spoiled. And my grandfather had friends who lived up the block who would always order the shows, which I guess kind of looking back, it didn't make too much sense why we didn't just go watch it with them. But we wouldn't. I think it was because my father would watch the shows on his own, and we kind of want to watch with him again when we came back. So we never did. But my grandfather's friend would always see the show with his kids, and then he'd come over and kind of dip around with spoilers. I always remember SummerSlam 1994. He was like, "Hey, do you want to know who won the main event?" And I was very adamant against, "No, don't ruin anything. I don't want to see anything." And he would say, "Well, the only thing I'll say," and I was like, "No." He's like, "Is the Undertaker won?" Of course, the main event was Undertaker versus Undertaker. Wasn't really a spoiler, but I remember him when it came to Sable's mystery partner. It kind of got ruined because of the fact he ruined it. He was like, "Yeah, there was some new guy who was her partner," and immediately I knew it was likely Edge. But at the time, I was thinking, "Oh, who could it possibly be? Maybe it's someone that I had heard maybe was in the developmental territory." I was thinking maybe it was going to be Al Snow, because it was a rumor that he had been brought back. Not a rumor, but they were building up that he was coming back. So I thought that was something that was cool and something that would be worth looking into. But during this period of time, WWE was really big on trying to get you to stick around after the shows. It's funny because they still do the same thing to this day. Even though pay-per-views are relatively long and they're usually on a school night, so it can be a little tough. And I am just going to quickly cruise over to Twitter. I'm still looking pretty decent enough over there. One of the things that's pretty interesting about the actual show was WWE always tries to get you to watch something after the pay-per-view. And they're right. I don't know what it is, but sometimes if a pay-per-view is really good and something ends, like last night's All-In show, if there was a post-show somewhere, I'd have been ready to fucking tune in because I was amped. Like, you're amped up. You're excited about watching something. You're excited about watching a show. You want to go in. You want to do your thing. And so why not? Let's, go through a post-show. At the time, WWE was promoting that after Raw, and I don't have any recollection of this, likely because at the time I was a kid, 11 years old. I wasn't able to stay up the whole time to watch Raw. But at the time, it was tough because while I wasn't able to watch Raw, so I guess, I never watched it live, so I never knew that this show existed. But they used to actually have a Raw post-show specifically to the internet. In 1998, in order to get people to go to WWF.com, they had a 1-hour post-show called Code Red, where they'd interview some of the stars about what happened on Raw. And damn it, I tried. I looked everywhere to see if there's any of these shows on the internet. Doesn't seem like there's anything, but that is some really rare footage that would be so much fun if they put that on the WWE Network. One of the things I think that's really cool about having the option to have the WWE Network now is if you're a continuity nerd like myself, you'll love the pre-show. Like, I had all those tapes I mentioned about all the pay-per-views. There would always be the pay-per-view pre-show that we'd record before that, all those free-for-alls and all that. Well, now that they've started to include Sunday Night Heat in 1998 to 1999, you actually now have access to all the Sunday Night Heat episodes. So as we go down this 20-year journey back in time, looking at all the different pay-per-views 20 years ago, we'll be able to watch the Sunday Night Heat right before the pay-per-view. We're not going to do it live on here just because it's already a 3-hour show. I don't want you guys to have to tune in for any longer than that. But you can go and watch it on the network, which I did right before this, which is an absolute great hype piece. What's really fun about these shows for me isn't even necessarily going back and watching these pay-per-views. but it's watching all the shows leading up to the pay-per-views. One of the things I really enjoy about it is you go back, you watch the pay-per-views, but you also go and you watch the road on the pay-per-views. And so that's, you know, something that is pretty cool from there. Let's see here. Might lose you guys here on the Twitter. I'm trying to fix the feed there. Let's see. They're also gonna. Okay, so I do apologize if the Twitter thing is still on. It seems like, all right, it ended. So we did lose it on Twitter. And I'm going to let everyone know. Seems like we lost the Twitter feed. And they can go on here and continue to watch us right here on YouTube as we continue the SummerSlam 1998 show. Thank you guys for tuning in on Twitter. It was a lot of fun. And there we go. Cool. We had 18 viewers on that, and good to see some folks that tuned in. All right, you know what? Actually, the stream looked much better on Twitter than it looked when I was viewing it. So we did pretty good when it comes to that, and I cannot complain at all. That's really cool stuff. So good stuff on there. All right, so wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to let the Twitterverse know that we are still live and on the air here on YouTube here. I'll let them know, and there we go. All right, so I'm just going to let everyone know over on Twitter that we are still in the air here on all right, thank you so much for all of you guys who checked us out. Sable with a Hurricane Rana off the top. So you got to give her credit. I mean, Sable was not a trained wrestler, had no intention of becoming a trained wrestler, and yet here she is, and she's kind of holding her own here. I should have picked up Edge's book here for the show because I do remember him talking about how nervous he was in his book for this match and teaming up with Sable. Very cool looking move there. Edge, Sable pick up the victory. But I thought that was really cool to go both onto Twitter as well onto YouTube Live. I was nervous about doing that because of the fact that when you're doing on Twitter, it's just on your phone. And I personally am a little old school in this type of deal and this type of production, but I always feel like the more professional you can make it, the better. I picked up one of these guys, got myself a legit mic, so that at least I feel like the audio can look good. I do feel like the webcam here on the MacBook is sufficient. I bought a webcam. Honestly, I like the webcam here on the Mac a little better than even the normal webcam there. But pretty cool, good for Edge to get kind of the he is so green here though, and this is still like Edge pre-brewed, Edge pre-ministry, Edge pre-talking. He doesn't really talk. He shows up. He's a good-looking guy. Look at the guy in the back there giving his sister quite the headlock. And here we go. Let's listen in on Mick Foley. This is the promo I remember.
The Undertaker just informed us that Kane is not going to show up here tonight at Summerslam. So my question to you is, will you defend the tag team titles tonight, or are you thinking of forfeit? I don't know. I've lost my car. I've lost my tag team. Or my sledgehammer. Maybe I'm on board with the farewell. That kind of means the people, never get their money's worth. They want to see this. The people want their money's worth. But I gotta Square Garden, yeah. One night. Luckily, I can guarantee you, you'll be in Madison Square Garden's Hall of Fame by next week. I will personally guarantee that. It's not a sledgehammer. It's coming around. That's your kind of match. I'm not the way. It's not the word. I'm yelling Falls County anywhere. It's you. It's you. Sledgehammer's not here. I don't have nothing. When your husband's around.
So Vince McMahon here is taking full advantage of McFoley. He's looking for something to hand him. All right. So they're talking about the Lions Den here. One of the cool things about this, one of the really smart marketing tools that WWE had done in Madison Square Garden back in the day was if they knew that they were going to the Garden, they would not only sell tickets to Madison Square Garden, but they'd also sell tickets to the theater at Madison Square Garden. And then, and then usually give you a little bit of bang for your buck. So not only can you can go and pay the full price to go to Madison Square Garden to watch the show live, or you can go to Madison, and then if that was sold out, most of the time it would be sold out instantly. Madison Square Garden, the worst in attempts to get tickets for WWE shows if they were pay-per-views. It could be the worst, shittiest pay-per-view. If it was at the Garden, sold out instantly. So because the shows would sell out so quickly, they would sell tickets to the theater, which was a little adjoining building. It would be kind of on the top of when there was a building there for the for the actual show. That actually one night my wife and I had taken our goddaughter to Elmo or something like that, and they made an announcement that they wouldn't let anyone exit through the back because there was a lot of wrestling fans doing their thing because it was Hulk Hogan Appreciation Night, and it was. So we would go rather than going with the fans and dealing with all that. But we did leave through the back. We allowed we were fine to go do that, and we walked right upstairs to where Madison Square Garden would be, which was Madison Square Garden proper, and that's where it would be. So you'd walk in, and instead of going through the front entrance, you'd go off to the side, you'd go right into the theater, which was a little smaller of a building, and it was almost like a building where it could be like a complex where you can go, and they would show the show on the big screen, the big Titantron, closed circuit, old school type deal. And it would be good. It would be a lot of fun. But so you can get, like, let's say your ticket for SummerSlam was $30, $40, $50, $100 to go. It was usually like $25, $35. You would be able to kind of get a ticket for cheaper to go into this theater. And you can see the theater right there, right behind where that Lions Den is would be where the stage would be set up, where they'd have those shows, like your shows for everything. And here's all the fans. They've probably paid $30, $40 to watch the show, and they get one live match, which is more than you got at WrestleMania 10. WrestleMania 10, you can be in that theater, and if you ever remember watching back, at some point Macho Man Randy Savage shows up at the theater to celebrate with the fans who are watching there. So they got a little live, appearance by Macho Man. But you were paying, a little bit less to still be there kind of live with everyone else. And you can tell the crowd is amped and excited and stoked and just happy to be there with a bunch of fans. It's a cool idea. I don't know why they don't do stuff like this to this day. I think that they don't really do pay-per-views in Madison Square Garden. They haven't in 7 years. But it would make for a good little deal of something to kind of get out of here. Dan Severn, he's turned heel now, and he is now Owen's trainer for this match here. And you can tell that the Lions Den is a little bit similar to kind of the Octagon for UFC. It's definitely where they got the idea for it from. But instead, they would do the deal where that's a cool shirt. And then there was one with the one crossed out. This is Owen. That's cool. That's one you want to try to go out of your way to kind of purchase there. If they ever release that shirt, shit, man, that'd be a cool one to get. And anyway, So yeah, so everyone got to see this show live. Everyone's standing up because, you know, you want to be able to see the show as best you can. And you can see those big screens where they have the Titantron videos. Those would be the screens, I'm assuming, where they would play the stuff. I mean, the actual SummerSlam proper. But pretty cool that they did this here. They actually had an NXT show at the theater at Madison Square Garden not all that long ago. So yeah, so again, Dan Severn has jumped in there as Owen Hart's trainer and his cornerman, so to speak. So this was an interesting match because it really was kind of bringing Ken Shamrock back into the octagon, and you know where he came from in UFC, same as Dan Severn. So it made sense to institute Severn as Owen's trainer, but this is one of Severn's last appearances. I feel like for WWE. Now I could be wrong on that. Let me quickly do a search before I give you guys the wrong information. But I don't recall him being around much longer past this feud. Let's see where we're at. You can see the referee. He's up on the top there. This would be the last time they do Lions Den, unfortunately. But I like the idea that this is in a completely separate entity. I've been to this theater, so seeing it kind of with this major structure in the middle of everything with rabid fans who are your most hardcore, who probably couldn't get tickets, and were just so excited they were able to be kind of close to the action, doing their thing, is pretty cool. And specifically seeing them do this. And I mean, it's frustrating for the folks who paid top dollar. I'll always think of that. I'll always think like, man, it's frustrating for the folks that paid top dollar to go and sit live and there for SummerSlam, but now they have to watch this over the speaker and watch it over the Titantron. But for one match, it is what it is. I'm going to go ahead and quickly pull up the Wrestling Observer newsletter from SummerSlam 1998 so we can take a look at kind of Dave Meltzer's feedback on the show and kind of that star system, because if there's something I do remember, it's that the star system always kind of was something that was pretty big for. I remember him kind of rating this match here in particular pretty high. If I give it a little bit of credit here, I got to always plug it, as I do each and every week here whenever we use it as a reference. Make sure you guys go over, cruise on over there, check out f4wonline.com. Sign up for the Wrestling Observer newsletter. You get access to hundreds of Wrestling Observer newsletters, their entire audio archive. It's like 10 or 11 bucks. It's a deal you can't beat, and it's incredible. So go ahead and support them. They do a great job each and every week with the content that they put out. So let's check out and pull up the SummerSlam 1998 as a reference here, as Owen and Shamrock do their thing. All right. Huge, big time thumbs up. 90.7% of the readers of the Wrestling Observer newsletter gave this. 98 people out of the 108 that were talked about. 98 people gave it a thumbs up. 3 thumbs down, 7 thumbs in the middle. All right, let's see kind of the feedback here on this match. Because I do remember Dave loving this match. It's something that at the time it was something that I didn't really necessarily think wasn't something that I remember it really connecting with me. But now going back as kind of an older fan who appreciates a good in-ring type matches, I respect it a little bit more. So yes, I remember Dave loving the hell out of this match. And he said, in a match at the theater, Ken Shamrock defeated Owen Hart in a Lions Den match in 9 minutes and 16 seconds. This match was really good. They built a very small structure with a 9-foot high cage, similar to a UFC octagon, but far less fighting area. Hart bled early from the mouth. Shamrock kept getting whipped into the cage. It seemed like he was forever blading himself. Continuing through. Seems like at first it appeared that Dan Severn, who was outside the cage, would throw in the towel, but instead Severn simply walked away from Hart, seemingly ending their relationship and building to a Shamrock-Severn match in the same structure as Hart tapped out. 3.5 stars. They never did build to that match. They did do a small Severn Shamrock match, and it was funny because it was built up as Severn Shamrock 3, despite the fact this was their first match in WWE, because they were actually continuing their feud off of UFC. And it's funny because, like, in the late 90s, UFC hadn't really hit its popularity yet. Like, it really hadn't. But with that being said, they did do a good job in really promoting the hell out of Owen and Shamrock. I mean, promoting the hell out of the UFC. They did the Brawl for It All tournament, which obviously Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn did not participate in. Probably for one of 2 reasons. Number one, if they had participated in it, they probably would have beat everyone, and because they were actually trained fighters, unlike everyone else. But that is pretty cool there, using the cage to fly off and hit an elbow. Ken Shamrock there. So they did a deal where it seemed like that was where they were going to go, but they ended up, Owen catching Ken off the cage into his body slam there. Pretty good. So they did a deal where instead of this, those guys didn't participate, but the other reason is because, God forbid, they actually lost to one of these other fighters. Can you imagine how pathetic it would look if they then wanted to transition back into UFC, if they got knocked out and caught by one of the wrestlers who weren't trained in actual fighting? Would not have been a good look. We'll get more into the Brawl for It All here in a minute. But they had that. They had this, which is clearly a takeoff UFC. And they were using a lot of UFC to kind of promote the careers of both Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn here in WWE. I was looking up for you guys to see Dan Severn, though. Because I don't remember his run lasting very long past this in WWE. He actually would be a part of the 1999 Royal Rumble, but there's just never really seeming there's much going on with Severn after this feud here where he kind of was the second behind Owen Hart, and kind of that muscle. And the trainer, I guess, for Owen. Yeah, this was a sick move the move Owen's applying right now is a sick move that Severn had kind of done, and Ken using the fencing there to kind of flip out over it and get out of the hold, which was pretty ingenious, and right into the ankle lock. I still say Dan Severn, the most boring man who's ever had his position in WWE as an WWE superstar. No pizzazz there, but they were doing the thing. This is the end of this feud here between Shamrock and Owen. Leading up to this, though, Steve Blackman was always the guy who kind of kept coming out to kind of help out Ken Shamrock be his second and be someone they can kind of promote from there. And did pretty well. I think he can't hate on Ken. I mean, Steve Blackman. He was good in that peacemaker type role. But good for Shamrock to get the big win there. It makes sense. And a good little feud there between Shamrock and Owen Hart. All righty. All right, cool. There's Stone Cold there. He's about as hot as can possibly be. They did a deal on on Sunday Night Heat right beforehand where Stone Cold was coming out. There was a hearse there. Austin was waiting in the parking lot with a sledgehammer going after the hearse, which he assumed had Undertaker and Kane in the hearse. Wanted to take one of them out to ensure it was a one-on-one type match. And in doing so, did a deal where he destroyed the hearse. He goes in there. Crowd sees him. Crowd is going completely ballistic for Austin. He's white hot. Crowd is jumping up and down, going nuts. And as they're doing it, they're promoting the fact that what's going to happen, you've got to tune in. Please call the local cable company, sign up for the pay-per-view. And I thought that was so cool and so old school. And it was cool to see that last night at All In, that they went ahead and did that as well. It's been a really long time since we've been able to kind of see that in a wrestling show. So here comes Mankind. Kane is nowhere to be found because of the fact that Kane is, he's turned on Mankind here, and he's gone back. He is in allegiance with The Undertaker, going against Stone Cold, even though Taker had said Kane wasn't going to show up. And so now that's the storyline. Taker said Kane's not here. He isn't going to be a part of the main event. And now Vince McMahon, who's really kind of just abusing Mankind here, in a storyline that would eventually pay off at the Survivor Series when he was kind of Vince McMahon's hand-picked person, so to speak, to go against The Rock and go against really the entire tournament. Unfortunately, the whole time he's screwing Mankind over and playing Mankind for a fool. And we can all kind of see that. And Mankind is now at a point where even though he's a heel, he's a lovable heel. And he's a guy that you can't help but kind of love. Specifically after the beating he got at the King of the Ring. And he has this great promo on, I want to say either the August 3rd or August 10th, 1998 Heat, where he opens up the show and he says, Jim Ross said if there's anyone who deserves a standing ovation after that performance at King of the Ring, it's this man here. And while Mankind says, and while I was hoping that would be the case, and while I'd get that standing ovation, only of the 20,000 sold out fans, only about 200 of them stood up and cheered because you people were stupid enough. Were too stupid to realize you were witnessing the greatest, the toughest SOB in the WWE. So it was pretty cool. Great promo. Go check that out if you can. And it made sense because here he was, and he said something like, "That's the last time he'll ever. That's the last time he's ever going to try to promote anything and do anything for the fans and give up his body for the fans." By the way, remember I mentioned before about South Park. You'll see the Outlaws are both wearing South Park shirts. crazy to see that Billy Gunn, we mentioned All In earlier, Billy Gunn was on that show in the Battle Royal on WGN America, along with his son, Austin Gunn. Kind of cool to see. Cool to see Austin Gunn doing his thing. I remember watching this match and really not understanding what was going on because the Outlaws, who at the time were baby faces, in my opinion, really came off his heels here. Sorry, guys, there. Thank you, guys. See a couple of you guys joining us in here. Hopefully you made the transition from Twitter. Something definitely to think about for the future, though. Maybe that double feed in the future is something we can look into. Something we could also look into for kind of the watch-along, the Disney 101 show that we do on YouTube Live each week that we're going to be doing tomorrow morning. Myself and my buddy Steve talk about the biggest news of the week in the world of Disney and Walt Disney World. And tomorrow we're doing a little recap of the summer as the summer has come to a close. Now, what I will say, and something that is interesting and something to kind of think about, I always think Summerslam is the end of the summer. Because right after Summerslam, I think the summer flies right by. And that's because back in the day, I mean, this show took place really, let's see here. Let me pull this up here for you guys. Summerslam 1988 took place on August the 30th. That's when SummerSlam should take place. This year, SummerSlam took place, I think, what was it, on like the 19th or 20th? And I feel like, boom. I mean, that was only a couple weeks ago, and it feels like it was totally finished now. But August 30th, 1998, from Madison Square Garden. And really, really good stuff there. And, you know, it was what it was. But this is you know, I always feel like next year they've announced that because of the fact that they're going to Toronto, and there's really 2 weekends that the Blue Jays are away, and they're able to do the show. They're doing it on, they had it where it was either going to be the weekend of August 10th or the weekend of August 24th. They went with August 10th. For the person who loves the summer, man, summer's going to fly by right after that. It always happens. I'm telling you, if you're a wrestling fan, pay attention to when SummerSlam is, and pay attention to how quickly the rest of the summer just right by real quick. And I expect this year to be no different, which is a shame. Yeah, Mankind he's really taking a bruising as he usually does, but I didn't really appreciate, as a kid, I remember hating this. I remember being like, here's the Outlaws, who at the time were 2 of my favorites. And really right beneath, in a weird way, the Outlaws, because of the fact that the 4 biggest stars in the company at the time, who were Mankind, Kane, Undertaker, and Austin, since they were in the tag team division, Austin and Taker were tag champs just weeks prior to SummerSlam 1998, and Mankind and Kane were always going against them. Because they were tag teams, they needed another tag team to kind of be in that fold. So the Outlaws were in these matches and a lot of Raw main events with these guys. They were kind of almost at a level above even the leader of Generation X, Triple H, because of them being in these main events with the top guys. Here they are again, going against Mankind here in a big high-profile match. And here, I think they work as total heels. They're double-teaming Mankind the entire time. Granted, that's the match. It's a handicap match, and it's for the Tag Team Championship, but they're beating the hell out of Mankind. I thought Mankind was, at the time, he was transitioning into a babyface. You can kind of see the people, the crowd, because you could watch them, the ones who are right by the entrance ramp. They keep looking back. They are just not convinced that this is going to be the end of, that Kane's not going to be there. Like, he's got to be there. They keep thinking, expect him. But look at this. I mean, Dog and Gunn really are coming off like heels here, despite the fact that DX is really one of the most popular acts in the company at the time. When the company was kind of set up, it was kind of like you had Austin and Taker here. Kane and Mankind were also right there. And you had DX one below them and The Rock one below them. But The Rock was the guy who was clearly going to be the future. And DX wins the tag titles, and that's that. There you go. We're going to take a pause for the cause. We'll be right back. Listen on the 2. Hello? All right. Apologize there, everybody. Once in a while, things happen when you're a married fellow like myself. In the middle of Labor Day weekend, we're setting up different plans for all these barbecues. I don't know that I can shoot back. Hey, it is what it is. But as you saw there at the end of that match, hopefully they did not take it out. Kane does show up. We'll smash the sledgehammer right into the face of One Mankind, setting up that heel turn, so to speak, for him, and it is what it is. So, shame. A shame. So we're looking here now at The Rock and Triple H, and they're a notch below the tippy-top guys in the company, right? So you have The Rock, you have Triple H, and they've had this feud for a while. They're clearly the two guys that are on their way up. Me personally, always thought The Rock was going to be a guy who was going to eventually go for the title because he was really picking it up on the mic. And even here before, he's doing his whole spiel. He's doing the you smell what The Rock is cooking and everything like that. Crowd's super into him. Crowd is really excited about it. And in doing so, he kind of comes off as a guy the crowd could really get behind and a guy the crowd could, maybe be that next babyface for the crowd. And that's really what happened. Eventually, they did transition him into a babyface before re-transitioning him into being a big heel. And this will be a lot of fun to kind of watch the growth of The Rock here each month as we do this, because at the end of September of next month, we are going to go back. We're going to watch Breakdown in Your House 1998. And this has been a lot of fun in going back and watching some of these older Raws and the build-up to all these different shows. Well, I wasn't at this particular show. I was at a house show the week before. This was kind of like the make good. The fam didn't think that I could, the fam understood that I was a little bummed that I wasn't going to the show because, again, now I'm in camp. Half my friends are going. and it was what it was. So the family, because of the fact we were going off for Florida for a couple weeks, we'd always usually go last week and a half of August, right before Memorial Day. So we went to the WWF at Long Island, New York, in Nassau Coliseum. And while this promo package is going on, I'll run down the card a little bit here for you. Check out the history of WWE.com. They do an awesome job. You can literally see every single result, pretty much ever, for all wrestling companies. They do just an incredible job. They're a great source. So listen to this card here, though, that from this house show at Nassau Coliseum. You had Southern Justice defeating Scorpio and Farouk. It's amazing, as I say, that Farouk was able to still have a career in WWE years after this as part of the APA, and then eventually get into the Hall of Fame, because it really looked like once he was done with the Nation, he was just done. Like, he was bottom feeder type guy. Then you had Tiger Ali Singh, who was doing his gimmick where he was trying to pay Americans to do really gross things, like $500 every sitting. We'll get back to this here just because I know they're doing the DX thing, and this is the DX band, and unfortunately the lead singer of the DX band is unfortunately passed away not all that long ago. And here's the rest of the DX band. This is the first of 2 appearances by the DX. No, second of 2 appearances. I'll talk about them in a sec. But let's hear them do this live, because I think it's pretty interesting. Hunter he was like, all of the X were really like the cool guys at the time. Very rare, at least they didn't cut this off. I mean, this is clearly, it's WWE. I don't think they had to pay any licensing fees for the DX band. But this is cool. This is pretty cool to see. But they got that drum set up so quick to get in there and to do the live version of this. There's that girl with the 316. Boy, they're in love with that woman. I don't know who that woman is, but they've showed her now at least 5-6 times. You'll also notice there on the guitar is Jim Johnston, the guy who is famous for doing all the WWE music. And he not only is the guitarist here, but he was also the guitarist for the DX band at WrestleMania 14 when the DX band played Triple H down in the ring and played Triple H and Shawn Michaels down in the ring, and also did God Bless America or the America the Beautiful. And it was so bad. It was so bad that I'm pretty sure that version of it is even cut off of the network feed just because people booed so hard afterwards. But it was interesting, and that, this is kind of like they were kind of built up after the Rage Against the Machine types and, your kind of rock grunge type music. Really interesting. And there's Triple H destroying the set with the drummer and getting rid of all the stuff, throwing the sticks in the crowd. And here comes The Rock. Very cool. So quickly, I'll go through the rest of the card here. Just wanted to kind of see that. So this was August 21st, 1998. So the Friday night before the SummerSlam, rather. So Tiger Ali Singh, he was doing a deal where every week he'd come out on Raw and Heat and try to pay people a sum of money to do really gross shit. Like they paid a guy to lick in between his butler's toes after his butler had been working out all day. Gross stuff. He defeats Dustin Runnels. We talked about him earlier. Ken Shamrock defeated Jeff Jarrett via submission with the ankle lock. Sable defeated Jacqueline in an arm wrestling match. They had done an arm wrestling match between Sable and Jacqueline, by the way, on Raw, which actually did look like a sick bump where they're going back and forth, they're battling back and forth. Jacqueline shoves out of it because she looks like she's going to lose, and then shoves the table on Sable. Sable falls back. Table goes to fall on her, but because of the way it felt, it bounced off her abdomen, and it looked like the sickest thing you'll ever see in your life. Then you had Val Venus defeating Mark Mero with a fisherman suplex. All of DX, Triple H, X-Pac, Road Dogg, Billy Gunn defeating The Rock, Owen Hart, and D'Lo Brown in a steel cage match. So I guess Mark Henry's not wrestling, I guess because at the time he's still not very good. So they don't do much with Mark Henry yet. He's really The Rock's second. Kama, as I mentioned earlier, he's now transitioning into the Godfather. He's really starting to bring out the hose, offer them to his opponents to not wrestle him. Road Warrior, Animal, and Draws defeated DOA. Draws was becoming the guy who would constantly come to Animal's aid, and he was really kind of that like up-and-comer type deal, and you could watch the debut of Draws and kind of the idea behind it on the Beyond the Mat documentary. But it was kind of a deal where every time Hawk would be drunk, Draws would come out and take Hawk's place. And on Sunday Night Heat, on this episode, Animal and Hawk come out. Hawk comes out. Animal comes out with Draws as his partner. But then Hawk stumbles out after that with the helmet on. Draws shows some frustration and goes to the back. And when he does this, Hawk is standing on the apron. He's got the helmet on his head, and he never even takes the helmet off because of how, I guess, wasted he is in the storyline. And they lose to Too Much, who at the time, Too Much is like bottom feeder type guys. Like they were not on the show at all. Grandmaster Seth, this is Brian Christopher and Scott Taylor. So this is before Scotty Duhati and Grandmaster Sex. They were too cool. They were Too Much. And they defeat the LOD, who was like an accomplished tag team, because Hawk like went up to the top rope and realized he was kind of looking like he was going up for a moonsault. Stumbled into Animal. Animal falls down. Too Much got the win. And that was on Heat. That was the first match that they saw there on the show. Then you also had Mankind and defeating Vader with a Mandible Claw and a no DQ False Count Anywhere match. And the main event, Stone Cold Steve Austin defeating Kane and The Undertaker with Pat Patterson as the referee. I don't remember too much about this show other than this was one of the shows. My friends and I went to the show as the Nation. My buddy with his shades on, carrying around the kid Intercontinental belt. And there was a couple of those like that. And we were really into the Nation. Let's see here. Triple H is going against. Also, one thing I will also mention about Nassau Coliseum. I've been going there forever, and one of the reasons that building means so much to me. I went to my first pay-per-view there, and you know, it was one of the. It was really the venue I went to with my mother. Sorry, yeah, bless me. Anyway, it was one of the venues my mother took me to because it was easy to drive from Queens out to Uniondale. It's a 25-minute drive. And then that venue really became a venue for me growing up where I could do the drive, and a lot of my friends would do that. We'd go to the Garden a lot, too. That was really the first venue I'd been to was Madison Square Garden. My dad would take me to all the shows, and we'd go together and have a great time. But what ended up happening was my dad, he didn't really go to Nassau Coliseum. That was more like the place I went with my mom. And then eventually I realized Nassau Coliseum was kind of the place that's where I went to my first pay-per-view. SummerSlam 02, which we didn't get to this year. Hopefully we will next year. You could also then, it was also the type of deal where I would go to that venue a lot because I went to Hofstra University. And I could walk right over from Hofstra. You could park at Hofstra and walk right over. So that was something I did all the time, every time they were in Nassau. And it's one of the venues more recently that I've tried to get to each time WWE does the show there. So there's a lot of history there at Nassau Coliseum for me. I really enjoy it, and it's good to reminisce about going to that venue. But that house show, no freaking thought process about what that house show was. Other than I do recall that was one of the shows we went to. Donning the Nation of Domination. Me doing the D-Lo head thing. Book bag inside out, book bag straps around the arms, book bag here as the chest protector, and I'm kind of doing that. They're promoting the Superstar line, which is kind of the end of the Superstar line, kind of as they transition into online. But Superstar line, you could pay like $1.99 to hear like a recorded conversation with the winners and losers of the matches. Probably the one time I think when they did that, they did it really cool and actually suckered us into doing it, was Royal Rumble 94. If you call the Superstar line, you can call like $1.99 a minute, but they'd reveal who was coming out next in the Royal Rumble. I mean, who cares? But at the time, I was like, oh shit, let's give it a call, see who's coming out next. And it was cool to kind of know who was doing that. But when you're coming now with the boom of the internet, and in 1998, everyone's got a .com. .coms are super popular. Kind of like these last couple of years, I guess, with podcasts in a way. Everyone's got a .com. Everyone has the ability to go on there and make a ton of money. And eventually it crashed. The .com era did crash pretty hard. But in 98, it's like now the internet's really becoming more popular. Not only is it with America Online, but other types of internet providers are starting to come out. And it ends up with a deal where, it would be a lot easier to just go on WWF.com rather than calling a hotline, because you can get that information for free. You could tell, by the way, I mentioned WWF.com a couple times. I want to see those Code Reds. It's like Code Red has become the new, after watching these episodes and seeing the production of Code Red and seeing that it was set up, so this year where we sat for SummerSlam, we were right next to where the backstage area was. And if you went over to where we were sitting, on the side of where the entrance was, there was this banister. And if you went and looked in the banister, there was a bunch of tarped off area. Well, if you looked over to where that side was, you could actually see the backstage area set up by WWE. All the stuff they were doing now for .com. So now, when going back and seeing exactly how it was set up in 1998, it was virtually the exact same thing. They had a commentary table. I think it was hosted by Tom Pritchard. Looked like some really cool stuff. Since we'll talk about the Mattel line of WWE action figures, here comes The Rock. He's got the yellow ladder. And the Ringside Collectibles actually released an exclusive figure of The Rock. I don't know if it's from this SummerSlam, but I believe so. Comes with both the Intercontinental title and that yellow ladder. They also have the Triple H. He's not an elite figure, but his figure was available as part of the SummerSlam Heritage Basic line. So you can go back and just based on what we talked about here, you could go back and watch. You can get yourself a figure of Triple H, The Rock, and Edge, all from this show. Wow, look at that. So Helmsley's only 29, Rock's only 26. So that means Hunter is in the process of turning 50. 49 now. We'll try to do this right at August 30th. I will let you guys know that over the next couple of weeks, we're trying to figure out the scheduling of the different podcasts. The best way to do it is to sign in, log in to Watch Wrestle, at Watch Wrestle Pod. We love talking to you guys on there. That's a lot of fun to chat with you guys on there. You can also follow me on Twitter at Tommy on the Spot, and I'll make sure I hook you guys up as to when we'll be on the air and what the schedule and the different shows will be moving forward. But a couple things to look forward to. We are going to be doing Hell in a Cell 2009. This is a show that I attended live. This will be next week on the show as we continue down the road to Hell in a Cell. That'll be something to kind of look into. The week of October 6th. I want to quickly mention to you guys. Bear with me. All right, October 6th. That week, probably October the 3rd, we're going to be doing the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast, going back and watching WWE Down Under from 2002. The last pay-per-view that WWE has that's on the network. It's called Global Warning. And we'll go back, we'll watch that Australian special. And then we are, the plan right now, October 6th is my birthday. The plan right now is to do a live stream. Who knows if this is going to happen? I can't make any guarantees because I have a wedding that night on October 6th. And the day before, I'll probably be out with some friends and family. So who knows what the state will be of myself. The plan is to do our first ever live stream of the WWE Super Showdown. Watch the show together live on YouTube and hopefully have a great time doing that. I'm looking forward to that. We'll talk about that in the coming weeks. But next week, Hell in a Cell 2009, almost a forgotten show. You have The Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell against CM Punk. You have the main event, Legacy, Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase. All these years earlier, Cody Rhodes in the main event, going up against Generation X, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. John Cena and Randy Orton in a Hell in a Cell. So we'll go back, we'll rewatch that show, and we'll kind of relive an era we talked about earlier. when we looked at, I believe it was the Bash 2009. Now we're going back to 2009, almost 10 years ago, looking at Hell in a Cell 2009. So Mark Henry, he is the one guy here. Hasn't really gotten into his whole deal where he starts going after China and starts going, against China, trying to get dates with China, kind of transitioning into sexual chocolate. Mark Henry, he is somebody right now you could tell they don't have the highest hopes for. He's out there. If you sign him to a mage deal, he's got like a 10-year contract, getting a boatload of money to do that contract, and in doing so, he is really kind of sitting there, and he's The Rock's manager. He's not really even having too many matches. He had very short matches. They did a lot to protect him, kind of similar to the way they did with Braun Strowman when he first debuted. He was kind of in the Wyatt family, kind of a background player, but they wanted to get people into him. And Mark would have a hard go at it for, I'd say, 5-6 years until transitioning into, the badass that we all know and love and who just got inducted in the Hall of Fame this year. But you forget that he was a part of the nation back in '98, and that's when he makes the comment about, we've lost the feed. We did so well with this feed, and now it seems like we've lost it, which is frustrating. Hopefully we can transition out and be able to pick up where we left off. Let's see. We'll reload that. And hopefully it'll be in the exact same place. We're at 1 hour, 55 minutes, 26 seconds into the show. We're in the final home stretch here. The Rock and Triple H in a ladder match. And hopefully we didn't lose the plate. Well, we're right back where we left off. Very cool. Gonna just get back to where we were. All right, 55-26. Rock's got the ladder up against the barricade and the steps. And here we are. So the feed's picked up pretty nicely, actually. Fingers crossed on that one. I do hope to be back with my Raw. This week, actually, with Labor Day is probably going to be tough. I'll be honest with you guys. Hopefully we'll do a little SmackDown post-show. Do a little Raw post-show maybe on Tuesday during the day at some point. Look for that. Hopefully jump online live either on YouTube or Twitter or something like that. We'll be able to chat about Monday Night Raw. We'll figure it out. But again, the best way to figure out where we're going to be is right here on Twitter at WatchWrestlePod or at Tommy on the Spot. And a lot of fun coming up throughout the rest of the year. So the reason why Triple H, by the way, his knee's all banged up, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but if you didn't hear it, on Heat, they did a deal where the Nation came out right before the show, and DX came out to attack them, go at them with him one-on-one. Everyone was a big melee, this, that, and the third. And as that was happening, Rock smashed Triple H's knee from behind with the Intercontinental Championship, which now kind of put Triple H at a disadvantage with The Rock kind of doing his thing. So funny stuff. So I had mentioned earlier how I was all about we have to watch the Home Shopping Network special. So that was another thing they were doing. After pay-per-views, WWE was doing a special on the Home Shopping Network where for basically an hour or two, they were getting you to sign up, call up, and there was a guy, Brian Collard. Don't ask me how I remember this. Well, I remember it because they were talking about it on the shows coming up. They kept promoting that Brian Collard and I want to say Michael Cole were talking about stuff on the Home Shopping Network. And you can go on the Home Shopping Network after the pay-per-view would end, and you would be able to look at a couple different options of stuff to buy, specifically from the show. So you'd have like T-shirts of all the big superstars, denim jackets, and event-specific merchandise specific to that SummerSlam 1998. Pretty solid idea. I'll be honest with you. They can probably do pretty well with that if they wanted to do something like that on the network where like afterwards they try to get you to promote and call up and say, hey, go online right now. You can get this specific shirt here from, I put up some shirts from this year's SummerSlam. The Samoa Joe AJ shirt was a big hit with everyone. The Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns one, not as much, but maybe the Ronda, Alexa Bliss one was. That was something where you can go and check out, take a look at those things, and have fun doing it. So it was cool, though. But in 1998, here I am, 11 years old, begging my family, probably fresh out of a day in actually, it wasn't Disney World. I was about to say Disney World, but when we got to like 10, 11 years old, my sister and I decided Disney World, we were too cool for it. A very bad state. Now here I am, 31, and hosting a Disney podcast about how much I love the damn parks, but 11 years old, I thought I was too cool for it. So we did not go to Disney World at the time, but transitioned into going to Wet n Wild, which is a really cool water park. And I remember the reason why I remember this was because we went either the day of SummerSlam 98, we went there the day or the day before to Wet n Wild, and we ended up, my sister and I, when we went to the it's a ride I think called the Black Hole or something like that. I'm pretty sure Wet n Wild just closed, which is a bummer. It was a great water park. We went on a ride called the Black Hole, and the entire time we're going down this ride, we're both screaming the lyrics of The Highway to Hell and how we were on the highway to hell. And that was this summer, and it's a real shame that that song has been cut out of the show because this show is really after that. This show really follows that deal. Good old Mark Henry. Helping out The Rock there. Throwing him the second ladder so that first one's banged up. Here's the second one to climb. So what, kind of transitioning back, I kind of got a little sidetracked with the Wet n Wild story. One of the big things about me was I was begging everyone that we can watch the home shopping special, so at least I can get a little of SummerSlam 98. And I remember my mother saying, well, don't do that because you don't want any spoilers and the matches are going to be ruined. So we turn on the home shopping network, and who's standing right there but Triple H, Intercontinental title on his shoulder, Outlaws, tag belts around their waist, X-Pac, full head of hair, 3 matches which was destroyed in that one backstage interview that I saw on the home shopping network, and we quickly turned it off, but it's too late. It was too late. And the reason for that, by the way, because I remember my dad was recording SummerSlam, and I was like, hey, Dad, you got to make sure you go and you put on heat, because, so the idea was, they were always promoting that people should tune in to the free-for-all. The free-for-all was usually one bonus match on the preview channel, and it was usually like your Todd Pettengill or Michael Cole really hammering home that you have to order the show, you have to order the show. Heat comes out in the summer of 98, in August of 98, and now the free-for-alls transitioned. Now instead of that, it's a straight preview show because WWE wants you to tune in to Sunday Night Heat. So Sunday Night Heat aired from 7 to 8, and the pay-per-view aired at 8 o'clock. And that's telling because this show, SummerSlam 1998, is... Ooh, Rock is busted up. This show is the first show that they transitioned from the pay-per-views being from 7 to 10 to the pay-per-views being from 8 to 11. Which is telling because to this day, the pay-per-views are 8 to 11. Well, now I think actually they're 7 to 11, but for a long time they were 8 to 11. And the shows before that were from 7 to 10, which if you were a kid and you had school, it was much better to have that from 7 to 10 because you could kind of finagle your way to stay up till 10. But if, staying up till 11, 11 o'clock was late back in the day. Oh, Hunter took a spill off that ladder. I don't recall too much of the of this match in terms of like high flying or any of that stuff because these guys aren't high flyers, but that was a spill off the ladder there by Hunter, real bad too. Hell of a match though these guys are having. And they did a deal where they had, I mentioned Sunday Night Heat so many times. I should quickly run down. I haven't even given you guys the results of that show. I told you about the LOD and too much. There was also a match between Dustin Runnels and Gangrel, who I mentioned had just debuted. Obviously, Gangrel took that one. And then it was the DOA against Bradshaw and Vader. And again, Vader at this point was so down on the card that he did nothing on the show. Bradshaw, they ended up losing, and then Bradshaw and Vader brawled. But Bradshaw had actually just was fresh off the heels of the Brawl for It All tournament. We haven't talked too much about the Brawl for It All tournament, but this was a tournament WWE was doing with about 16 different wrestlers who were really on the undercard of the show. And they basically had a tournament set up where they'd fight 3 one-minute rounds, and it'd be legit fighting. So this was really WWE's way of saying, most of the stuff you see is entertainment, but now this is legit. So they put guys in there who had no business getting in there. They were not trained fighters. They didn't know what they were doing. Guys were getting hurt right and left. And it was really some of the most random names you'd ever heard of. You had like one guy from DOA. Dr. Death Steve Williams was brought in, and he was really built up like he was going to win the entire tournament. As was other guys, like Brackus, who had been like promoted for years as making his way to WWE. He was in the tournament. A lot of different people. But the tournament would happen on Raw, and I always felt, well, kind of I felt while watching it, it would have made sense for them to put the main event of the Brawl for It All on this, on the show. Would have made a lot more sense. And they had Danny Hodge, former classic wrestler, as the judge there. I'll take a quick peek over at Danny Hodge, because I'm curious if he's still. I feel like he's still alive. Let's take a quick look. He is. Craziness. Good for it. That is fantastic. Danny Hodge is still alive, 86 years old. So 20 years ago, 66 years old, and he was the judge of the, and he's obviously really big for JR. Comes from Perry, Oklahoma. He was the judge of the tournament. And it was supposed to be the tournament where they were going to premiere Dr. Death as this straight-up badass who could just beat the shit out of everyone. And instead, it ended up being a vehicle to promote Bart Gunn. They didn't want to, and you could tell they didn't want to because, boy, every single, deal with Bart Gunn, they were like, this wasn't going to be a deal that they wanted to promote him. But Bart ended up knocking everyone out and won the entire thing. But I feel like it would have made a lot more sense looking back at the Brawl for It All. Well, it would have made a lot more sense for it not to occur. But since it did occur, the finals of the tournament happening at Summerslam would have been something to really kind of get into, because it was your undercard guys who it would kind of mean a lot to them, you would think, to get a spot on the SummerSlam card and give them something to fight for and give them kind of that pay-per-view bonus. Instead, they blew it off on Raw. It wasn't mentioned at all, at least not yet. And Bart Gunn ended up winning the entire thing, and he got the Brawl for It All trophy. Beat Bradshaw in the end. And Bart was awesome. Bart, in my opinion, I know this sounds ridiculous, but Bart Gunn was coming off like a real badass. And it really looked like this was something they could have really built around. And they tried. Following his win at the Brawl for It All tournament, they actually took Bart off television and started to train him as a legitimate boxer so that he and Butterbean could have a match and a fight at WrestleMania 15. We'll get there and we'll watch it, but obviously Bart was destroyed. And I always wondered, man, if Bart beat Butterbean, what would it have been for Bart's career? But Bart, he was showing some fire, kind of as like a heel who was pissed off that no one wanted him to win the tournament. No one thought he was going to win the tournament. It was all about Dr. Death. Here he comes. He shows up. He wins the tournament and does his deal and does what a lot of people didn't think he was going to be able to do. So pretty cool. It wasn't a great tournament in terms of like people were getting hurt, but I thought that they could have done something with Bart Gunn. Instead, they put him in an impossible situation. Butterbean had tons of tough man competition wins and boxing wins, and he had no chance. But at least Bart got a spot on WrestleMania and a match on WrestleMania. But after that, it was donezo when he got knocked out by Butterbean. Great match here between Triple H and The Rock, though. This match, I believe it got, I don't even have it up anymore, but it got definitely at least 4 stars from Meltzer. And you can see Mark Henry cheering on The Rock, Triple H getting cheered on by Chyna. I love Chyna as the muscle for DX. They actually did a deal, believe it or not, on Raw where they had to determine the #1 contender for this show and this match. and it was between Triple H and X-Pac. Triple H ended up winning the match by defeating X-Pac, and then they actually teased that maybe DX was going to call it quits. And this is the famous segment where Triple H and X-Pac say that they were initiating a DX split, and China jumps up and says, if anyone's going to initiate a DX split, it's going to be me. They all turn around, they moon the camera, and all is well in DX Slam. But it shouldn't have been. I mean, China just came, beat X-Pac there. Nice little shot of mooning the camera there. Rock's ass just popped out. Triple H pedigree. Crowd is so hot for him. Look at the crowd. Good God, crowd is amped up, jumping up and down. Faith No More guys super into it. Vladimir smiling from ear to ear. Crowd is pumped, man. This is late 90s WWE crowd. That crowd is fucking rabid. Yes, I did throw an F-bomb in there. Felt I needed to. It is what it is. But yeah, crowd is really amped for all this. Crowd's really excited for it, and why not? So yeah, so Mark Henry throws the powder in the face of Triple H. The way they're getting with the figures now, if they ever created an elite figure like of Triple H with this, they'll definitely have a second Triple H head with powder in the eyes. Rock and Hunter climbing that ladder, though. One of the most iconic shots here, really in SummerSlam history. You know, Edge and Christian had mentioned recently, here comes China. Boom. Low blow to the Rock. Hunter now going to try to climb. And really, I remember being very surprised because Hunter did. He felt like he was always a little bit of a notch below the Rock. And so I was, when I saw that clip of Hunter holding the Intercontinental title belt on the Home Shopping Network, I lost my mind and I was like, Triple H won the Intercontinental title? Like, it was so surprising because it didn't seem like he was the guy they were really getting behind. Like, he was the leader of DX, and DX was a super hot act, but DX felt like more of kind of a jokey type, you know, they were all about comedy, they were all about fun, they were all about good times. We talked about in our King of the Ring episode that, or maybe it was Fully Loaded, that DX, you know, was going around and promoting this match and promoting that WWE was coming to Madison Square Garden for SummerSlam, but that, you know, going around getting girls to show their breasts and posing with police officers, and it just didn't seem like main event acts. And now here it looked like this was Triple H's crowning moment. But of course, this would actually be The Rock's crowning moment because there he is looking at the lights. But it would just be a couple months before The Rock would end up being the world champion and have an entire show built around him by the end of this year. But good moment here for Triple H. DX is super into it. Felt like the WWE was finally getting behind him. Love the graphic of the Statue of Liberty there. This is a great match. This is definitely the match of the show. And I mentioned earlier, Edge and Christian on their podcast were saying that moments at SummerSlam don't live on like they do at WrestleMania, but you can make a strong case that this moment here does. Triple H, powder in his eyes, kind of claiming that first major spot for him, first major, at least in this incarnation of Triple H. I know Blue Blood Triple H was Intercontinental Champ, but this feels like he's on the precipice now to be a main eventer, and clearly him and The Rock were, and clearly him and The Rock went on to become two of the best guys. And this moment here with The Rock, oh, exclusive home video footage. Rock getting to the back. Love shit like this. Glad I was able to see this. Guessing this is still Coliseum home video. We're gonna. Oh, this is some cool shit here. Let me get back here. So The Rock's making his way to the back. Looks like he's a bit banged up. See the head of security over there. X-Pac looks like he's giving him some kudo, giving him a handshake. There's Luna. Everyone's looking for Undertaker because he's up next. I think that's Bruce Pritchard looking for him. And Rock is going with the Doctor right to the back. So now Rock's the character, but he wasn't before that. That was cool. He would say that, but Rock was well on his way, and that's a home video exclusive. That was a pretty awesome, pretty cool to see, because that's 1998 WWF. That's super old school. You got to take a look kind of the backstage area there. You kind of watched me there. I was probably marking out, and first time I'd seen that. That was really cool. And Rock would say that he'd go for revenge, but sooner or later he'd be a babyface. Pretty darn close after this. I'm pretty sure the next time we meet about 1998 WWF and we go through Breakdown in Your House, Rock will already be a babyface. That kid in the SCU shirt is loving that he is in front of that camera there. That kid is probably in his late 30s, early 40s now, and wonder if he watches this show. He's got his little kid sister who's probably in her mid-20s, early 30s. And they're all doing the big suck it. Very cool. That's fun to see. And here we go. This is the main event. Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin for the championship. Tony Chimmel, they're starting already 20 years ago to transition out of Howard, which I never thought they should have done, but Howard Finkel was the guy. At some point you got to move on. But this is my favorite Undertaker theme, the Ministry theme. Let's listen to this here. So cool. It's like the Lord of Darkness Undertaker. He's got the big jacket with the little like shit behind him where he looks like fucking this and good stuff. So cool. Make no mistake too, I had mentioned how the biggest stars were Undertaker and Stone Cold and Mankind and Kane. It was really Austin way up here, Vince McMahon a notch below him, and then Undertaker, and then Kane and Mankind, all those guys. Vince McMahon, #1 heel, and by a large margin. And we're now, we're a couple months in of Vince McMahon eventually going to be transitioning into becoming more of an in-ring competitor, and that's going to be fun to kind of relive as well as we transition to 1999. We started this podcast with about as good of a starting point as you can get to. June 1998, King of the Ring 1998, and it's been fun to kind of go back and watch these shows from that era. Such a badass theme, though. I just love going back here and seeing all these fans, and I'm thinking, like, man, like that one with the 316 shirt, she had the DX glow sticks in between her breasts, and they've gone to her at least 20 times in the show now, and wonder if she's still a fan. You look at these people, you wonder what they're doing in their life 20 years later. As I'm reminiscing about being 11 years old, going to the Wet and Wild with my sister, who at the time I think was like 8, and the two of us singing Highway to Hell. Look at that. They got the 316 glass that they have put up here, the glass pane. Boom. All that set up just to shatter, and Austin to walk right all in through it, and everyone throwing up middle fingers in appreciation of him. And he is as red hot as he can be right now. He is the guy, and his popularity couldn't be any bigger. And this will be fun. This will be, now really kind of watching here the Austin era, him at the top of that card and continuing to see him reach new heights with each and every time going to this. But this is fun to watch, man. This is cool. Going back and just remembering everything and noticing, like, again, going to camp and hearing all my friends talking about it. Not, couldn't wait to get back to talk to my friends from camp and hearing their stories about being around during 1998 and being at this show and what it was like to be in that arena. And I was trying to get one of them to chat with us here today just because I always think that live perspective, that's what the show is built on. That show is built on what it is to be a fan live in that particular area and during that period of time. And it'd be fun, man. You could tell the goatee was in '98. I remember my father also had a goatee. And Taker and Austin both have a very pronounced goatee. A lot of people hate on this match. I remember this match actually being really, really good. So we're about to find out and see kind of where to go from there. I feel like this is a situation kind of like, they always say if you put the crowd on mute for Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania 18, it's nothing of a match. But at the same time, it's fun to go back and kind of see everything and hear everyone kind of doing their own deal. Yeah, and I think the deal here with this, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to pull back up the Wrestling Observer newsletter because the big thing here was that both these guys were injured going into the show. How crazy is it, by the way? This show was 20 years ago, and now we're sitting here and we're preparing for a match in just a little over a month between Triple H and The Undertaker. 20 years later, these guys are still out there having matches, and that match is the entire show is built around that match there. That's a glorified house show, that card that's being promoted for Melbourne in Australia. But it has Triple H and it has The Undertaker, and so that kind of separates it as being something a little bit more. All right. So, by the way, 4.25 stars for that match there between Triple H and The Rock. That was the longest match on the show. Yeah, so Meltzer talks about how Undertaker. Remember, Undertaker's already still kind of reeling from that ankle injury. He's having some issues with that from the spot that he took in the King of the Ring '98. That he already was struggling with that. That's kind of why that match had to start on the top of the cell, because Foley was worried they wouldn't be able to live up to the Taker Shawn Michaels Hell in the Cell. But that's why that match happened. It was a good match, this match here. I do think, though, that both were hampered by the injury. I think Austin had been dealing with something where he was, I want to say he had a concussion or something like that, or he was sick before the match. Bad research out of me. I apologize for that. Taker and Austin really doing their thing here. And it is a little slow in plotting, and Meltzer keeps talking about how Taker really looks completely gassed throughout this match here. And he really hadn't been having too many matches, even though they were one of the reasons they were tag champs was that he wouldn't have to have those long singles matches because he was injured. And Austin also, too, going into this, was banged up and had really throughout that summer of '98 when he's at his absolute peak, because this is peak Stone Cold here. Remember, this lasts a while. This lasts really until with Austin as the top guy, 01. However, that also does, he's also battling injuries on and off throughout his entire run towards the top of the company. Really, Survivor Series 1999, he gets injured, but even before that, he's has some injuries here and there, and they start to build up more of The Rock as that top guy. So, it's always crazy to think if Austin never has that spot with Owen Hart at the SummerSlam prior to this in '97, where he breaks his neck, kind of how long his run at the top would have been. Hopefully they wouldn't have made the decision to turn him heel and make him into a joke either, but it is what it is. I actually loved him as a heel. I thought he was very funny. I just, it's hard to, you look at Austin here, he's a complete badass. He's killer. He's really, not only is he a badass, but he's able to kind of keep that aura and that mystique while doing interviews. It's something that I feel like Braun Strowman's kind of wrestling with right now. Braun comes off like a total badass, but when he's interviewed, he kind of comes off, and when they showed the footage of him kind of on his personal time, he kind of comes off a little too jokey for me personally. That said, it was a completely different era. Also, there wasn't Twitter. There wasn't Instagram. Braun's constantly doing live Instagram stories, and there wasn't so much of that behind-the-scenes documentary stuff. That's why when they showed that footage of Rock walking through the backstage area, I perked up. I thought it was so cool to hear them looking for Undertaker before his match because of the fact that, that's cool to see. Back in '98, you didn't see that type of stuff. Now here in 2018, this information is just, it's seen at your fingertips so much. It's a lot harder for these guys to carry that mystique like an Austin did. Austin can go on and have an interview on the radio, which he did do many a time, and he'd have that, and he'd have almost that little bit of a charming personality, but he'd still be badass Stone Cold of what made him who he was. He wouldn't be, for example, on Regis and Kathy Lee. When he'd be on there, he'd still be badass Stone Cold with a little bit of twinge of maybe being a little bit more like friendly, so to speak. And here comes Kane. And now Austin's like, shit. Because these guys together, they were like, my God, they're going to be the most destructible force. And this entire show is built around, remember, what is Kane going to do to help The Undertaker? They're in cahoots. They're doing their thing. They're helping each other out. And now Taker's telling him to go to the back. He wants it to be Taker and Austin. After all that, so what was the point? The whole show's built around their relationship here. Funny seeing Kane in the entranceway there. Just a month ago, he was on one of the big promoted matches. Unfortunately, got hurt, but he was in one of the big promoted matches with Team Hell No. Now Kane's all pissed off walking back, but he's listening to Taker because this is what Taker wants. Now, just a couple days ago, a friend of the show, Juan Carlos, who was on the show 2 weeks ago, sent us a little video, a little picture, sent me a picture of Kane assembling an office chair from Kane's Twitter. And Kane is now the mayor of Knoxville County. I think it's Knox County, actually. Raw, by the way, and I only know this because I was watching the final Raw before this show and fell asleep. I was watching it very that was a cool looking move, but it looked like Taker almost fell or did fall while he had Austin up there. I know that we've gotten along here on this show, so thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once this ends here, we're going to probably cut to black about as quick as All In did last night. God bless him. Just because I don't want it to be too lengthy, any longer than it needs to be. It's a 2-hour, 42-minute pay-per-view. We did the All In reaction at the beginning just because I wanted to give a couple minutes on that. I thought it was an important show. I was going to do it last night, but I felt like, nah. There's a guy, God bless him, total different times. If you brought that sign to a show right now, I guarantee you, if you brought a big sign, Roman Reigns sucks. Talking 3 hours. Gets to my voice. If you were a sign that said Roman Reigns sucks, I'd be willing to bet that sign would be confiscated. No doubt about it. You would not get in with that sign. But different times. Austin's your top babyface. Someone's sitting right in the front row with a huge Stone Cold Sucks sign. WWE should hire their own security guard like they had here. I don't know if they still have them, but this security guard is a badass. Look at him fighting back the rabid fans to make sure nobody gets too close to Austin and Taker. I love that song. Somebody had a sign earlier, Goldberg sucks. The guy over here has a sign. Goldberg is the man. D.A. man. You knew he meant business by that. Vladimir getting himself into the picture. He had that same spot almost every time they came to the Garden. There's that spot of him. Survivor Series 96. Another iconic moment. Sid wins the title, and he goes there and hugs Vladimir, who's in that exact same spot. I am talking about the super fan with the glasses and the red hat, by the way. I love that at All In yesterday, too. I mentioned the guy in the pink sweater, but there was another guy who was in the crowd who I thought did a really good job. They were dressed as the green shirt guy who's always at the WWE shows. You know you've made it, I guess, as a fan when people are dressing like you to be on the camera in that way. Got the long hair, too, so it was to show his mom. But back then, it was these guys were at all the shows, specifically the ECW shows. Vladimir, the super fan. Faith No More guy. They got the long hair. Looks a little bit like a cross between Rob Zombie and Howard Stern. More so, Rob Zombie. And Faith No More guy. We really look a lot like the guy in Faith No More. Yeah, Taker's a little winded. Taker is a little winded, but, I mean, I love this type of stuff. These type of main events where they're running around, they're going crazy, that's where it's at. Austin off the ropes there, over the top. I will say, so I love the folks that do live streaming of different WWE shows. I've actually mentioned a couple times I was on our honeymoon. My wife was sleeping, and I wanted to watch the Punk fight, and I could not get it anywhere. Couldn't find it on YouTube. Couldn't find it anywhere. We're in South Africa, so it wasn't like there was an option to go pull it up and stream it off UFC's website, which is originally what I was trying to do, and find some places to just buy it because I really wanted to see Punk's fight. As Undertaker and Austin now are on the outside. So I love these old school main events where they're on the outside, they're battling all over, they've gone through the crowd, they've gone into the back, he's destroying the back area, now they're destroying the table, and they're getting everyone involved. But yeah, so I was on that honeymoon, and I found a guy, Conman187, I think, and he was doing a live stream of himself on YouTube. And when I mean live stream, I don't mean getting the stream illegally. I mean legitimately watching somebody else watch the show and hear them talk about it. And so I haven't done it, and just because I worked usually Mondays and Tuesdays till 9 o'clock, there's no way for me to be able to sit down and do it during Raw SmackDown. But that show, Superstar Showdown, whatever that is in Australia, is definitely a time where I'd like to do it. We'll see. See if we can make it work. It's going to be fun. Look at Taker here. Not only has he got a banged up ankle, not only is he a little bit gassed out, but he's going up to the top rope. Austin's all the way on the entrance. This is 98. And here comes Taker. Bang! Leg drop, and ouch! The table doesn't break, so they kind of fall off. And there's a, you know, Earl Hebner, can we get the fan dangling over the side? Pulling these guys out of there. Jesus Christmas. Yeah, please. Come on. You're better than this, Earl. Get that out of the way. Woo! Badass nonetheless. They may not have broke the table. And it's always worse when the table doesn't break, by the way. If ever you watch something and the table doesn't break, it is awful. And there's times when you'll see it a lot now. A lot more now, the tables won't break when they do moves on them. But they'll do like a big-time move. The guy comes down, and rather than going through the table, he bounces up off it. That shit, you can tell, hurts so much more than if it just went to a million pieces. So this is peak, you know, announce tables going all over the place. Having the old school Jack's wrestling figures, the Jack's bone crunching action wrestling figures, sitting with my buddy Al and setting up table on table on table on table on table, having 10 tables stacked like this, having someone drop another wrestler off the dresser through tons and tons of tables, because this is the type of stuff you see on WWE all the time. Oh! Very cool. They're on wobbly legs, man. They're, you know. Think about the last two matches have been, they're in total, The Rock and Triple H, and then now this match here, they're in over 45 minutes. The two of those matches were over 45 minutes. Oh, double clothesline. Try here, let me see something. And I always thought the poster for SummerSlam 1998 was one of the best ever. Let me see something. One of the best ever in terms of building up a big match. I'm going to pull it up for you right now. And there you go. You guys check that out right there. You've got Austin and Taker battling over New York City. You've got Taker with the Empire State Building. Is that the Empire? Yeah, Empire State Building. He's cracked, I believe it's the Empire State Building. He's cracked it off. And you've got Austin. Let me pull that up. Austin with the arm of the Statue of Liberty there. And then you've also got, you can see even the Twin Towers back there behind Austin. One of the coolest posters they've ever done. The attention to detail there, and really just promoting that, you know, New York City is one of the big points, and you can see people, by the way, walking around in the entrance ramp, in the entranceway. But New York City here is built, the show is built so much around New York City. It's like when they did the promotion for Royal Rumble 2008. You can tell how much Vince loves New York City and loves that history that Madison Square Garden has, and probably is shitting his pants, not shitting his pants, and no one's touching WWE in terms of business, but probably a little irked that G1 Supercard is going to be coming to Madison Square Garden, New Japan, and Ring of Honor, because of the fact that the Garden means a lot to Vince, and they always go above and beyond. That's a great poster there. I'll never forget also the ads for Royal Rumble 2008, where they're going through the airport, and they're going, you know, everyone's getting into the airport, the subway station. Everyone has the big fight in the subway station. Like, those are things that, or even WrestleMania 2013. Can't forget about that. When Vince shows up and shows off this massive set where I've always heard that particular Mania, while being there live, and we're going to talk about that one because there's a lot of stories that come out of that when we get there, but I always heard that particular Mania was something where it was a lot of fun and it was interesting to see. And maybe over on, rewatching it, maybe it's not the greatest card of all time, but if you were there live, because of that setup, that Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, all set up all around everything that shows off New York City, almost looking like maybe the New York and on the Las Vegas Strip, but it's on the set for WrestleMania. Being there live for that, I heard was awesome. So we have Undertaker setting up here. And we're getting down to the nitty-gritty right now. Last couple minutes here. Last 3.5 minutes here in this match. So I wanted to thank you guys so much again for checking us out here today. Glad we were able to kind of check something out different here on Twitter and have us stream both on Twitter and on YouTube. Definitely something I want to try to continue to do. And great to talk with you guys. Great to have a little bit of fun here on this Labor Day weekend. The end of summer. I can't believe it's already gone. But if you're a wrestling fan, a lot of fun stuff coming aboard here. You've got, as Taker goes up for old school here, you've got Superstar Showdown. All In was just last night. The Women's Evolution pay-per-views coming up. Hell in a Cell in a couple of weeks. Sooner or later it'll be Survivor Series. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Big time Stone Cold Stunner. And your 1, 2, 3. Really slow count there from Earl Hebner. Felt like Earl didn't think that was the finish. But Austin wins, of course. Crowd is super amped up. Guy holding up the Stone Cold cutout. Austin looks in legit pain, but people were into it. And at the time, they'd be promoting you to check out the turn on the Home Shopping Network and keep hearing about this. But Taker's got the belt, the cool Smoking Skull belt. And we'll pick back up on 1998 WWF in 4 weeks when we look at Breakdown in Your House. But instead, we're going to have fun times next week. Hell in a Cell 2009. We'll go back in time. We'll look at the Hell in a Cell 2009. We'll have a real good time in doing that. And here's Taker. He's going to pop Austin with the belt. And instead, does the right thing. Hands the belt over to Austin. I'm sure as he contemplates whether his decision was worth it or not to send Kane to the back and do things mano-a-mano. And he looks over at Austin like, damn, you're about it. You're a badass, Stone Cold. I guess he'd be more like, you're a badass. I can't do Undertaker. But Austin says, you're damn right, I'm a badass. So do a little better, Austin. I don't know if that's a good Austin, but good times, though. Really fun to go back, relive this show, see, kind of how the undercard is positioned and how they're given a spotlight there with a couple of those early matches. See how cool it was, how they kind of built up a match specifically in the theater. Here comes Kane to walk out there with Taker, as if to say, hey, Stone Cold, you're not done yet. You might have got past one of us, but there's another one standing here, and now you're going to have to deal with the both of us, which will transition perfectly into Breakdown in Your House. Raw was preempted the next night. It was actually aired on the Saturday after. We'll talk a little bit about that, though, when we do get to the Breakdown in Your House pay-per-view. And until next time, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you follow me on the Twitter, @WatchWrestlePod, @TommyOnTheSpot for more announcements of when the next show will air. And if you like what you see, please do give us a like and hit us in the comment section. Subscribe over on the page and follow us over on Twitter. Until next time, everyone, this has been Tommy on the Spot. Thanks so much for joining us on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. If you're jonesing for some more Tommy on the Spot, more me on the podcast world, check us out tomorrow, Disney 101. Till then, take care, and we'll be in touch real soon.